For me, I'm gonna say for now, this is an overreaction.
Buried him in the turf with his chin wrapped around his nostrils. He calls a timeout. Good wherewithal by Eli.
Great wherewithal.
Put this to music. I don't think he stepped out either. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Welcome into another edition of the Giant Overreaction, the realest, rawest Giants content on the entire internets. Big shout out to the gang, man. Appreciate y'all being here bright and early. I saw y'all in the chat chopping it up. Big shout out to all of y'all, man. It's real, y'all. The New York Giants lost another game. Thanksgiving Day. Happy belated Thanksgiving to all of y'all. Hope y'all grubbed well. Hope y'all did everything y'all had to do. See some family, twist up a little bit of something, you know what I'm saying? Eat good, live good, blaze good, all that good stuff, because the New York Giants definitely were not playing good football. Lost to the Dallas Cowboys 27-20. Went into this game not technically healthy. I think it was at the advantage of the New York Giants, being that Drew Lock did get the start over Tommy DeVito. No Tommy DeVito, no Deonte Banks, no Jermaine Illuminor. We end up losing some players in this game. Most importantly, we lost Dexter Lawrence, which a lot of people are speculating that Dexter Lawrence might be out for the season. The New York Giants now have absolutely hit rock bottom. And to be honest, I'm surprised y'all are still pulling up for some of these streams. There has been a bit of more commitment to Giants content that I've noticed in the past here, with the New York Giants struggling, sitting at 2-10 on the season. One more loss and we will have matched our worst record in the past however many years. Since 2019, that was the last time that the New York Giants were sitting at 2-11. Tough time to be a New York Giants fan right now. The Dallas Cowboys improved to 5-7, keeping their playoff hopes alive, hanging on by a thread there one time. The Cowboys did get their first win at home. Of course, it would be against the New York Giants. Y'all know how we like to do when it comes to history here. The New York Giants are now on a 7-game losing streak, y'all. A 7-game losing streak. This reminds me a lot of the Washington Commanders last year, who ended up losing 11 of their last 12 games. And we knew that they were in tank mode. With the New York Giants, it's a bit of a head scratcher. It's a bit puzzling. A lot of people can't figure out what's really going on, if Brian Dable is going to be fired, if Brian Dable is in on a tank job here with the front office and the owners of the New York Giants as well, or what is really going on with this team right now. But losing 7 straight games, somebody has to be accountable for this. The Giants have lost 8 straight games to the Dallas Cowboys, 15 of the last 16 games. The Giants have now lost 10 or more games for the 9th time in 11 seasons. So we've been doing this. We've been used to this for a decade. The vibes cannot get any lower than they are right now. The Giants, the one positive here is that the only direction they can go from here is up. The Giants became the first team officially eliminated from the playoffs. That happened on Thursday. And in my opinion, I thought they were already eliminated. I remember seeing 2 weeks back that the Giants had like a 0.5 chance of making the playoffs, according to ESPN. The Giants are terrible, and this game showed it. I will say this, the team did not completely quit, and you can tell that they had their eyes on at least social media or what was going on around, the national stations like ESPN, FS1, and all the conversations that were being had about the Giants looking like they've quit on this coach. The one positive I can take away from this game, team-wise, is that the Giants did not quit. You saw them go all the way into the fourth quarter, even when this game got pushed to a 2-score lead. Late in the fourth quarter, when the Giants scored another touchdown, they were still trying to get back into this game. The defense ended up coming up short there at the end, couldn't get the stop to give Drew Lock and the offense one more chance. And the defense just struggled all day long. Outside of the penalties was definitely an issue. 13 penalties for 98 yards. Couldn't stop the run all damn day long in this one. 3 for 12 on third down, 4.2 yards per play, 3.4 yards per pass. We did score 20 points in this game. That was just our 3rd time scoring 20 or more points this season. And all of this is happening during the Giants' 100th season. In a season where we had a player with a retired jersey number 1, allow a rookie to come in and wear his jersey, and the Giants becoming one of the, I believe, the first team to unretire a jersey for a player, especially a rookie in Malik Nabers, who is having a pretty good season. But this is all happening in a season that was supposed to be a celebratory moment of one of the most historic franchises entering their 100th season. And all of this is happening while Saquon is on pace to break Chris Johnson's record, while Saquon is on pace to break Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. And the Eagles within our own division have won 8 straight games while the New York Giants have lost 7 straight games. Seems like it wasn't that long ago when I was hearing some of the beat reporters and some of the journalists in our community writing about the New York Giants and closing the gap all before we opened up the season against the Dallas Cowboys and got our socks blown off. I want to say it was 40-0 in that game. And here we are sitting at 2-10, just under 2 seasons after those comments were being made. The Giants right now are on pace to be winless in the NFC East for the first time since permanently joining the division in 1970. They're on pace to finish the season with the worst record in franchise history. They're also on pace to finish winless at home for the first time since 1974. That was before I was alive, and I'm sure a lot of y'all out there. I know we got a lot of OGs who do tune into Authentic and the Beard that were probably around for those times around 1974. And I think the argument that is being had now is this the worst New York Giants team that we have ever seen? The Giants right now are on pace to finish the season with the fewest points scored in the NFL for the first time since 1953. It's been bad, y'all. It's been very bad. The Giants have started 3 quarterbacks for the 3rd time in 4 years, and a lot of that speaks to the unavailability of Daniel Jones at the quarterback position, but he is no longer on this team anymore. And I know a lot of Giants fans want to, when the Giants part ways with a player, they want to just completely move on, even though we've been dealing with these things for 6 seasons, just like Saquon Barkley, 6 seasons, just like Daniel Jones. People expect 6 days to go by and that you should completely forget about these players that played a pivotal role in the losses accumulating for this ball club. The Giants now, as I've said, 3 quarterbacks have started in a single season for the 3rd time in 4 years. This is the 2nd season in a row that the Giants have started a different quarterback in 3 consecutive games. So this is more of the same with the New York Giants. Can't get the quarterback position right. I have seen people come out, and since Malik Nabers, a guy who I think should not have said these comments, that it's not the quarterback. Now a lot of people on social media are running with that same exact narrative and pretty much coming to the conclusion that the Giants have obviously bigger problems than the quarterback position, but that the quarterback position was not a problem. And I think we've seen that. Not only was it with Daniel Jones, not only was it with Tommy DeVito, you could go back to 2 seasons ago with Tyrod Taylor, and now with Drew Lock. Joe Shane has failed to address this quarterback room the proper way. And I thought in return, Drew Lock went out here and he tried to play as well of a game as he could have put out there. And the numbers aren't staggering. The numbers are not great. But I thought Drew Lock, ill-prepared for this game, 24 hours notice, came out there and played a pretty decent game. These numbers look a lot like some Daniel Jones-like numbers. And I thought he did some things well. I thought he pushed the ball down the field pretty well. You did have the drops from Darius Slayton, the fade route that was a perfect ball from Drew Lock, maybe 40 yards, 50 yards down the field. I don't know what Slayton was doing, didn't get in right position to make the catch. You had a few drops from Malik Nabers in this game. It seemed like drops were just plaguing this entire game. I mean, CeeDee Lamb had 3 drops on the day as well. Drew Lock, 21 of 32 for 178 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have that costly fumble. Lock led the New York Giants in rushing with 57 rushing yards, which makes absolutely no sense. He had the 8-yard touchdown run, the 28-yard run that looked like a touchdown at first, but the referees went back to review it. Ended up being short on the goal line. Tyrone Tracy ended up punching that one in a play later. The Giants were 2 for 2 in the red zone. That's probably their best percentage on the year at 100%. The couple big-time runs showing his mobility. I thought Drew Lock had a pretty decent game for a guy that you could tell was a bit, I won't say nervous, but just not ready for that moment, right? You could tell that Drew Lock wasn't getting the true reps with the ones. When you see the back shoulder fade route that he threw to Darius Slayton, where Darius Slayton couldn't get his feet in bounce, it just reminds you that a quarterback like Drew Lock has not had enough time with the ones. He has not had enough reps with the starting receivers or the starting offensive line. And in this one, the offensive line was banged up as well. You're talking about a substitute replacement at left tackle and at right tackle for the New York Giants. And we already saw the kind of dividends that it doesn't pay for the New York Giants when Andrew Thomas is not on the field, a guy that I think moving forward we absolutely have to be looking at under a microscope, because Andrew Thomas has been hurt for the majority of his time here with the New York Giants. And if fans are going to be as willing to call guys like Saquon Barkley injury prone along with Daniel Jones, I think we got to look at Andrew Thomas the exact same way. Now, the bad for Drew Lock, the interception on the screenplay in the first half where I think it was Devin Singletary that was on the screen, got kind of blown up, but he picked up the blitz pretty well, gave Drew Lock enough time to at least see what was in front of him. And you just see that DeMarvion Overshown just makes an incredible play. But nonetheless, Drew Lock has to keep that ball out of harm's way. He also fumbled on the opening drive of the second half, and those kind of things can't happen. Just 32 net passing yards at the half. It's more of the same. We've seen these type of numbers from Tommy DeVito. We've seen these numbers from Daniel Jones, where Daniel Jones was, I believe, the first quarterback to have 0 passing yards in a half and still have a touchdown. So Drew Lock does seem like he could be the best quarterback that the New York Giants had on their roster throughout the entire season, but that's not saying much because the New York Giants quarterback room is absolutely pathetic. He was sacked 6 times on the day. The offensive line could not keep him upright. I thought there were a few times there that Drew Lock did a good job of evading pressure and making him, a way to just extend the play. And we saw that Theo Johnson was the beneficiary of some of those plays as well. Theo Johnson probably had his best game of the year, playing extremely tough, running over defenders. I heard somebody even say he looked a little bit like Jeremy Shockey. I wouldn't go that far, but I think that we're seeing the reasons why the New York Giants did draft Theo Johnson in the 5th round, although they had already drafted a tight end just 2 years ago and spent a 3rd-round draft pick on trading for one in Darren Waller the following year. Theo Johnson does seem like a guy that you could possibly build upon, but it does show the waste of another draft pick in Daniel Bellinger. Now, someone on Twitter told me, if Drew Lock was Daniel Jones, you guys would be killing him for the 2 turnovers. And I do agree with that. Yes, we would be killing Daniel Jones for 2 turnovers in a game, but I think the big difference is Drew Lock was in his 24th start as a pro. Daniel Jones has started 70 games for the New York Giants. There's a big difference in that. And although Drew Lock was drafted in the same year as Daniel Jones in 2019, these quarterbacks have not had the luxury of having the same amount of experience in starting games. And all too often, I feel like people are too quick to write off quarterbacks. And Drew Lock is a guy that's been in this league for a long time. I really wouldn't put him in that category of a guy that, being written off too fast. But we've seen this with guys like Malik Willis, who just had 2 starts with the Tennessee Titans, and people wrote him off as a bum. Gets traded over there to the Green Bay Packers, and things look awfully different when you put this guy around some stability. And that is the complaint that a lot of New York Giants fans had about Daniel Jones. But through the years, the New York Giants did everything in their power to put a stable situation around the quarterback, and it has not worked out. It just has not worked out. Now, I do think that DeMarvion Overshown was the big star in this game, pun intended, with the Dallas Cowboys, because without his play in the first half, I think the New York Giants would have really been in this game. Both offenses were not really having a lot of success throwing the ball. The Cowboys were having some success running the ball, and Rico Dowdle was absolutely a difference maker in this game. But the Cowboys' only touchdown in the first half came on that pick 6 from DeMarvion Overshown, a guy who blew out his ACL in his first year that a lot of people, including myself, had forgot about. 6 tackles in this game, and that pick 6, I definitely think that he was the difference maker. Rico Dowdle as well, a guy that me and the Beard have talked about Rico and his inability to be a main staple type of running back with the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys should have addressed running back in the offseason, and that has been a lot of the reason why the Cowboys have struggled this year. But Rico Dowdle, you got to give him his props in this game. He had his first 100-yard game of his career, 22 carries for 112 yards, 1 touchdown, and the Cowboys ran the ball extremely effective throughout the entire day. The Cowboys rushed for 122 yards on the ground against the New York Giants on Thursday. And that's just been more of the same. The New York Giants have struggled to stop the run all year long. And shout out to Bobby Skinner for this number here. 107 of the Cowboys' 122 rushing yards were after contact. So that goes to show you that the New York Giants have been having a tough time tackling runners. And you saw that Dexter Lawrence complained about this last week, about the New York Giants being soft, along with Malik Nabers. But I bring up Dexter Lawrence because when you see a team that just can't tackle, that they're in position to make the plays, and they're unable to do so, that does scream soft. And you saw the beat reporters kind of trying to press him out a little bit and get a little bit more of a solid answer out of him about why he thought the New York Giants were playing soft and maybe dig deeper beneath the surface when really there was nothing there. But that is the facts. The New York Giants are playing soft. They can't tackle, can't stop the run. Their secondary is weak. They're not able to get pressure on the quarterback. I believe it was 0 sacks on Cooper Rush in this game. And I understand the Dallas Cowboys offense is built to get rid of the ball quickly. But this was just a very lackluster performance by the defense. I think it was just 4 pressures on the day. That's just unacceptable with the kind of money and the kind of draft capital that has been spent up front for the New York Giants in a 5th overall selection in Kayvon Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence getting paid a big contract, and I can't put this on Dexter Lawrence. He's being double and triple teamed every damn play for the New York Giants. I saw one play where he was triple teamed and he literally just grabbed one of the guys and just tackled him to the ground in frustration of not being able to get after the quarterback with 3 guys trying to stop him. I can't put much of this on Dexter Lawrence. Brian Burns is getting paid $28 million a year, over $150 million on a 5-year contract, and he's just not showing up in this game. I think he had 2 or 3 pressures in this one. The majority of what the New York Giants did. I looked at the pass rush win rates for the New York Giants. It was Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns were the only guys in the front 7 that did not have a 0% pass rush win rate. Got to do better on the defensive side of the ball. And the Cowboys' passing attack was not all that great. They didn't have a single wide receiver go over 55 yards. A couple of plays from Kevontae Turpin, that one screen play after the Drew Lock fumble that led the Dallas Cowboys into the red zone. CeeDee Lamb had just 2 receptions for 39 yards. Brandon Cooks was back in this game, and the touchdown was a really nice play in man-to-man coverage with Adoree Jackson, who got the start over Deonte Banks in this one with the injury Deonte Banks was dealing with. But no spectacular performances really from the pass catchers for the Dallas Cowboys. Just 3 receptions for Brandon Cooks, 16 yards. He hadn't played in the game since that last matchup against the New York Giants, which was in week 4 or 5, I believe that was. But the Cowboys are a team that came back into the 2024 season, right, and really didn't make any game-changing roster moves, right? They pretty much went into 2024 with the exact same roster they had from last year. Lost a couple of pieces even. But I do think that injuries have derailed the Dallas Cowboys' slim chances that they did have. I mean, no Jake Ferguson in this game, who's been dealing with injuries throughout the year. He's dealing with the concussion. No right guard in Zach Martin, who's dealing with the ankle. Eric Kendricks has been banged up all year. Brandon Cooks just coming off IR. No Trayvon Diggs. No Marshawn Nealon. Obviously, no Dak Prescott. Deron Bland just getting back off of IR. Hasn't really been able to. Just seems like he's not 100% healthy out there. And you look at the first place schedule that the Dallas Cowboys have had to deal with this season. And I've been saying this throughout the weeks, but really the only game that they lost throughout this year that was really like a head scratcher was the game against the New Orleans Saints when you look back at it in hindsight. But they just caught the Saints at the wrong time in week 2, coming off a week 1 performance where they scored like 40 points, I believe it was, and then they put up like 50 against the Dallas Cowboys. But when you look at the losses on the Dallas Cowboys schedule, the Ravens, the Lions, the 49ers, the Falcons, the Eagles, and the Texans, you could argue that all those games should or could be losses outside of maybe the Falcons game, and we'll throw in that Saints game. So the Dallas Cowboys, I know they're dealing with a backup quarterback, but they do have some personnel over there. I saw that Steve Smith and his co-host on his podcast on YouTube, they did a show that was based upon the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. Which situation is worse and what team would you rather be? And I felt like they presented a lot of great arguments for both sides, both teams, but they really didn't come to a conclusion. But right now, I know the Dallas Cowboys, as far as salary cap, aren't in as good of a situation as the New York Giants are, but I think I would rather be the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this is a team that won 12 games for 3 straight seasons and now has kind of fell back down to earth with these injuries. But even in still, the Dallas Cowboys could still finish out the season with a record over 500. The New York Giants right now, there are so many holes on this roster. The mismanagement of the quarterback position on all levels of the depth chart here. Okay? Mismanaging depth across the board on literally in every unit. The mismanagement of depth has been riddled throughout every unit on the New York Giants. From the defensive line to the offensive line, which everybody thought that when we brought in new guys like Jermaine Illuminor, John Runyon Jr., Greg Van Roten, that we had enough pieces up front. But again, Joe Schoen has failed to address the depth up front to protect his quarterback. His big $92 million guaranteed investment in Daniel Jones, who now only played, 8 or 9 games this season before the New York Giants went on to release him. It really doesn't make any sense. And here we are sitting here at 2-10 with a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers. And the temperature around the New York Giants community about the coaching staff, about the general manager and the rest of this front office a week ago was these guys are on the hot seat. People wouldn't be surprised if some people lost some jobs. And now that the weekend has come to a close and some of the noise has been silenced, it almost feels like we're in for absolutely the rest of the season with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen here running the New York Giants. Whether they get fired at the end of the year, I'm not 100% sure. I got a couple of tips from a couple of people that I consider some good plugs around the NFL community that Brian Daboll is a dead man walking. They didn't tell me nothing about Joe Schoen, who, in my opinion, it seems that Joe Schoen is the guy that his seat should be a little bit hotter than Brian Daboll's. And we'll get off into that when we talk about some of these Giant overreactions. But to me, I think that we're going throughout this season trying to find a scapegoat outside of the general manager. And first it started off with the quarterback. Now, look, we could rewind it back. We could say that it first started off with the offensive play caller and Mike Kafka, who in 2022 likely called the best Giants offense that we have seen through this regime. And then it became Daniel Jones. And then it became the offensive line. And now it's starting to become Brian Daboll, which is pretty interesting to me, a guy that was a former coach of the year. But I've said here on this channel multiple times that if Brian Daboll were to be fired, I would not have any beef with it because the NFL is a results-based profession. And the New York Giants just, quite frankly, don't have many results. That's just what it is. Let's tap in with the chat one time real quick. We'll start off with the super chats and then just kind of wheel back. And then I want to immediately get off into the Giant overreactions here. Got a full schedule here in the studio to work on a lot of work today. So it's going to be I know when I say this normally, it definitely doesn't mean it, but I think that this is going to be a short show. We'll try to stick this one out as long as we can. But let's tap in with the chat here and see what we're talking about here. We'll start with the super chats, like I said here. Big shout out to Dean one time with the $4.99 super chat. He says, let's get this started. Watching what Russell Wilson did for the Steelers this weekend frustrated me. Shane thought he was done. He knows nothing. That's what it seems to be. And, you know, Russell Wilson came into a visit with the New York Giants literally days before he signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was really an alley-oop type of situation because the Denver Broncos were pretty much paying for Russell Wilson's entire salary. I think the dead cap, it was over $65 million. And he signed for a veteran minimum. And then they brought in a guy like Justin Fields, who they traded for a conditional 6th rounder, maybe a conditional 7th rounder. And they have 2 quarterbacks that are very capable on their roster right now that I would say are better than all 3 of the quarterbacks that the New York Giants had on their roster to begin the season. So, yeah, and Joe Schoen, when Russell Wilson came in for the visit, Joe Schoen pretty much told him that he couldn't guarantee him that he would be the starter here. So Russell Wilson was going to be coming in as a backup. And Mike Tomlin went out there, and when Russell Wilson was hurt, obviously had to start Justin Fields on the season. Justin Fields got the Pittsburgh Steelers to a 4-2 record. And everybody, including myself, thought that Justin Fields earned the starting job. But when Russell Wilson got healthy, Mike Tomlin immediately went to Russell Wilson as the starter. And you saw the uptick in the passing numbers, especially with George Pickens over there as their wide receiver 1. His numbers completely went up and skyrocketed. And Mike Tomlin went to the podium, and when asked about it, well, you know, about Justin Fields being the guy that looked like he should have been the starter and why he made the move to Russell Wilson, well, Mike Tomlin said, that's why I get paid the big bucks. And you've never heard Joe Schoen or Brian Daboll come up there in front of the podium and say a comment. I won't even say that arrogant or that cocky. I'll say that confident. You've never seen that out of our guys. And I think Mike Tomlin understands not only the players that he has on the roster and the ones that he is inquiring about, but also I think Mike Tomlin has a very good gauge of who he is as a man and as a head coach. Whereas in our case, with our general manager and our head coach, we really don't got that because these guys are not seasoned. They have not been around the NFL as long as a guy like Mike Tomlin has. Mike Tomlin has been with the Pittsburgh Steelers for however many years and has never had a season under 500. And the New York Giants have, won 6 or fewer games in 6 of the last 7 seasons, now going on 7 of the last 8. I think that's why those things happen. And right now, that's the reason why the New York Giants are the laughingstock of the entire NFL, because as Tom Brady said on the broadcast, this is the kind of stuff that happens when you pay the wrong guys. And the New York Giants and Joe Shane absolutely went out there and paid the wrong guys. Shout out to Dean. I think he paid the right guy in this instance here with this super chat for $4.99, man. Big salute to you, my G. Appreciate you supporting the channel. Dorgunner coming in with the $2 super chat.
Okay.
Dorgunner says, I think my boys got their mojo back against Tennessee. Yeah, man, Washington put up a stellar performance, starting off in that first quarter where I think they scored 28 points in the first quarter, and everything that could go right for the Washington Commanders in that game against the Titans did. I mean, the turnovers, the fumbles, the kickoff fumbles, and capitalizing on that and scoring touchdowns on all of those possessions. I think they scored touchdowns on 4 of their first 5 possessions. So that's how you get it done. I was rooting for the Tennessee Titans, obviously, because I want that number 1 draft pick for my New York Giants. And the Titans are a little bit in the way. But I do think that the Titans are a worse team than it appeared to be. The passing statistics, when you just look at them at a glance, say that the Tennessee Titans have one of the better pass defenses in the league. But I've been saying this for the last 2 podcasts. Shout out to Mina Kimes, who brought these numbers to my attention. Their starting field position for their opponents is the best in the NFL by far. So teams are having to go shorter fields, and obviously the Tennessee Titans offense is just terrible. So they're not helping out that defense at all. But nonetheless, a great performance by the Commanders. Good way to get back on track, because that was the kind of game that you see the Dallas Cowboys took care of business on Thursday. If the Commanders would have lost to the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, you would have been giving a little bit of an avenue for the Dallas Cowboys to kind of try to make a push here. But I would say that your playoff spot is not guaranteed, but it's looking good for you right now. You got 3 teams in the NFC North. You got the 2 teams in the NFC South that are going to be battling for a spot as well. The San Francisco 49ers are another team to keep in mind in the NFC West as well. So it's going to be tough. You got to handle business here. I do think your destiny is in your hands here, but nonetheless, good win, door winner. Can't wait to talk about that on tomorrow's show with the Beard at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we break down all the games from the NFC East as well. Shout out to 59 Ways to Groove for the $1.99 super chat. He said, new generation soft, all they do is pout, no fight. I can agree with this to an extent. I don't think this is a bit of an overreaction. I can agree with this. The new generation is cut a bit different, and I've noticed that the willingness to give them the benefit of the doubt, there's no more. I guess you got to blame the parents, man. I guess that's who you got to blame, because just we're not being raised with the same toughness that we once were raised with. And I'd blame the iPads and the whole digital social media era and all that stuff. It's just different now. You don't got to grind for yours and work for yours. You see people having ways to cut corners and get to a quick buck fast or get to a quick result fast. And I do think that this generation is definitely a product of that. It's tough, with great power comes great responsibility, and I think that technology has a lot to do with it. But shout out 59 Ways to Groove. Shout out Dr. Garrett in the building one time with the $1.99 super chat. Says, hard to find anything Shane has gotten right. Yeah, it's starting to look like that. It really is. I'll say the contracts on Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas, not overpaying those guys. That's about it, man. And the 2024 draft class, I'll give him his props on that. The 2024 draft class has been pretty decent. But the results are just not there, and the Giants are in a bad place right now. I don't know how we're going to climb out of this hole as a team. It's going to be tough. And for the first time in a long time on this channel, when it comes to the approach, I've still been thinking about this, week in and week out. The approach of how to rebuild this. I'm not set in stone on any direction quite yet. I've heard a lot of people say just tear it all down, fire everybody, get rid of all your cornerstone pieces, trade them away, get the assets, get as much draft capital as you possibly can. And although I understand that sentiment, I'm not, my eggs are not all the way in that basket yet. So it's tough, man. Joe Shane has dug this hole for this grave. And ultimately, I think he's going to have to be held accountable. I don't know if it'll happen during the season, at the end of the season, or at the end of next season, but it ultimately is going to have to be held accountable. And I know John Mayer is having some sleepless nights for sure. Shout out Dr. Garrett, man, for supporting the channel, man. We wish you well, man. And over here at Authentic in the Beard, I don't think Daniel Jones' woes were your fault. I got to keep it real. Shout out Talking Eco one time with the $4.99 super chat. He says, do the Steelers overvalue positional value or retain their best players? Shane is the anti-Gettleman with the same results and same arrogance. See, it's puzzling. I mean, you allowed 2 all-pro players to walk in free agency and didn't get not a lick, nothing for them. And that's going to happen with guys like Azeez Ojulari and Darius Slayton as well if the New York Giants don't extend them and give them new contracts. This is malpractice, man. Like, I don't know what's going on with Joe Shane, and some of these moves just, you know, they seem like the kind of moves that you make to appease the fans in real time, but that you will understand that in hindsight, when you look back at them, they weren't good moves. Like, I know I've been talking about the Brian Burns situation a lot on this channel, and it's not directly a shot at the player. I think that Brian Burns is a pretty damn good player. I think he's 14th in pressures right now in the NFL. I think he is a good player. But one, I think that the Carolina Panthers got rid of him for a reason, because the negotiations probably weren't going the way they wanted them to go. This is a guy being paid $28 million a year. And I'll continue to say it. Geno Smith at the quarterback position is making $28 million a year. And I don't think that Brian Burns brings that kind of value. I don't think that he presents that kind of value to a team where he should be being paid this type of money. You know, I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was Steve Smith that was talking about it. Steve Smith was talking about the myth, or the, you know, just the statement that goes around the NFL now that everyone is bigger, stronger, faster. And he compared Micah Parsons to Javon Curse. And he said, I don't care what nobody says. That player he does not wreck games the way that Curse wrecked games. You can look at the edge rusher position, and there were edge rushers back in the day that were much better players and obviously getting paid less because of the pay scale. But in accordance to what players were making in the NFL at that time, these guys got the money because they were game wreckers. And I don't look at Kayvon Thibodeau as a game wrecker. I look at him as a good, solid player. And I think that we have to dig hard and refine a place in the NFL that breeds contracts for guys that are middle class. Because to me, and there's nothing wrong with being middle class. Like, listen, I live a middle class life right now, and I'm proud as hell of that middle class life, right? But at the end of the day, I think we need to understand exactly who the player is. Just because the market dictates a player should or should not make a certain amount of dollars. You could look at it in the Daniel Jones situation. I never thought, and this was when I was completely out on Daniel Jones, is when there was rumors and you were hearing speculation about this guy being paid $35 to $45 million a year. Right then and there, I was out. You can go back and you can check out the stream that we did on the Giant Overreaction after the 2022 playoff win against the Minnesota Vikings, where I said, I guess Daniel Jones is the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants. He went out there, he played a hell of a game, and I thought that you could have paid Daniel Jones after the 2022 season, although for me, and what I consider value, I would have went with the bridge quarterback and started the process of trying to reset the rookie contract clock immediately. But had you paid Daniel Jones the $28 million that a Geno Smith got or that a Brian Burns got, I don't think that fans would have been, the roar would not have been as loud from the people who are on my side of the coin when it comes to Daniel Jones. And I think it speaks towards Brian Burns, a guy that he's a good player. He gets after the quarterback. He's a liability in the run game. He does some things well. He does some things not so well. If there was a middle range for his position and what these guys should be being paid, somewhere around what Dorrance Armstrong made, I'd be all good with it. But instead, Joe Shane overvalued the edge rusher position, which we did need depth at that position. I'm not going to sit up here and fake the funk on that. And then he undervalued what a running back brings to the table. I went back and I revisited some of the Saquon Barkley tweets that I had put out during the time when he first signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. And just looking at some of the brainwashing that has happened when I was looking through those comments about, oh, no smart GM ever pays a running back, period. And you're looking at teams this year that are watching dividends being paid by paying the running back. The Baltimore Ravens, who, took an L to Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, and the rest of those Philadelphia Eagles this past Sunday. They look fantastic, though. And the Eagles just so happen to be the better team on that day. I thought the Ravens were going to win that game. But they paid a running back. The Philadelphia Eagles paid a running back. The Green Bay Packers paid a running back. The Minnesota Vikings, who committed to the rebuild as best as they could, paid a running back. The Houston Texans paid a running back. And during that time, when C.J. Stroud was having, you could say he's still struggling a little bit. I put him back in my fantasy lineup this week, and he damn near cost me the game. I won my fantasy game by 0.1, literally. And I got Russell Wilson sitting on my bench with 36 points. But the C.J. Stroud point is this. They paid a running back in Joe Mixon to be that security blanket. When Nico Collins went down, C.J. Stroud's game took a hit. Tank Dell was banged up throughout this season as well. Their offensive line is dealing with a bunch of injuries. They can rely on the running game to win games. And that's why they brought in a guy like Joe Mixon. And you kind of see that the Cincinnati Bengals are losing out a little bit by not having Joe Mixon in the lineup, although they are finding ways to supplement for the run, doing it the poor man's way off the clearance rack, the way that the New York Giants tried to do it with Devin Singletary, who is a guy that, in my opinion, should have been traded at the trade deadline. But, yeah, our general manager is fucking up. That is the easiest way to say it. Shout out to Talking Ego, though, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel, my dog. Shout out to Prime Mo one time in the building with the 199 super chat. He says, one day closer to our quarterback. And that's a fact, and we're going to talk about that here on some of these reactions. The New York Giants right now, they're in a tough spot because there are a lot of bad teams in the NFL. The Jaguars took a loss this past weekend. The Las Vegas Raiders took a loss this past weekend. So we got some people that are, giving us a run for our money for that number one pick. And we're going to need a top 2 pick. That's how I look at it. We're going to need a top 2 pick so that we can walk away from this draft with Shedeur Sanders or possibly a Cam Ward. And if we don't, things are going to get extremely dicey. We're going to be banking on the Giants to draft a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round, possibly day 3, who knows. And we've been in this situation before where it has not went our way. And I don't want the New York Giants to walk away from the 2025 draft. Is that what we're going to be in? The 2025 draft, y'all. I'm getting old. I'm getting too old to be able to sit up here and watch these New York Giants lose games the way that we have. And it's going to be tough if we don't get one of them first 2 spots. We're going to be looking at a guy like Jalen Milroe, possibly the quarterback out of LSU, maybe a Jackson Dart, Drew Allar out of Penn State. I don't want to be in that situation, y'all. And we're going to talk about that here on some of these Giant overreactions. I brought 3 good Giant overreactions for y'all today. And I think that a couple of them are going to split the room. Diet Ghost says, to be fair, everyone was out on running backs. That includes fans. I wasn't. If you go back and you look at all the Giant overreactions in the streams, and I always tell y'all this, I am a person that if I see everybody running left, I want to know why everyone is running left. I'm actually, and listen, this is a thing with black people, right? If one person starts running, all the black people are going to start running. And we're likely not going to all run in the same direction. We're probably going to run in different directions. I'm the kind of person that if we start running and I'm jumping fences and the beard's behind me, I'm going to be like, bro, don't follow me. That's how we used to get to running back in the day, all right, when we was doing the dirt that we was doing. Now, as far as this running back thing, I came up here stream after stream after stream and said, okay, I understand that they have devalued the running back position. And from a dollar standpoint, people are not paying running backs as much. But at the end of the day, we're talking about contracts that are relatively, for the most part, under $13 million a year. Even the greatest running backs were getting paid 13 or under at that time. Christian McCaffrey, who's dealing with another injury. I think they said it was a knee injury on the broadcast. Prayers go out to him, man. He's dealing with a bunch of injuries, but he's the kind of player that I would never write off. But he was making $16 million. All the other running backs were underneath that. And to me, it just made sense. It's just okay, I understand you guys can get a running back in the 3rd round. I now understand that if we're only paying running backs somewhere around $10 million, give or take, that we should not spend high draft capital on running backs, right? Because that makes sense. Why would we spend top draft capital, let's say a top 5 pick, on a running back who, when it comes time to pay him, he's never going to take up the type of salary cap percentage that a quarterback is going to take up, or even a wide receiver or an edge rusher or a left tackle. So I understand the debate that says don't spend high draft capital on a running back. I get that part. But when you tell me that you just should not pay them at all and that the only way that we should attain running backs is to get them from the draft or get them from the bargain bin clearance rack in free agency, I never agreed with that. And when they were trying to convince me that we needed to part ways from Saquon Barkley, my thinking was this. If you are going to commit to the rebuild 100% and not pay a quarterback and not bring in a edge rusher at $28 million a year and not try to just Band-Aid up this offensive line for the quarterback that you overpaid, then it doesn't make any sense to not bring back the running back, right? Because if you're going to pay the quarterback, pay the edge rusher, to pay the running back just $12, $13 million a year is nothing. We paid Drew Lock $5 million a year, and when it came time to start a backup quarterback, we went to Tommy DeVito. So to me, it screamed bring back Saquon Barkley because Joe Schoen obviously was not committed to the rebuild. And I've been saying this. I know my fam in the chat knows. I've been saying this a billion times on this channel, and people still really don't understand where I'm coming from with that. Like, when you look at it, if somebody told you that the Dallas Cowboys had $12 million to operate in salary cap spendings, you would be like, they don't have a lot of money. So when it comes time to pay not only the best playmaker that you had on the offensive side of the ball, your biggest leader in the locker room. Remember, we traded away Odell Beckham literally the year before we drafted Daniel Jones. So when we entered 2019, the only leaders on this team was Eli Manning and Saquon Barkley. That was really it, right? And through the years, we drafted some other guys that became guys that you could depend on as a leader, Xavier McKinney being one of those. Joe Schoen let him walk. But now you're talking about you left Saquon Barkley as the only leader on this team, and he's doing it from the running back position. And you brought back Daniel Jones. You paid Dexter Lawrence. These are all the things that Mike Lombardi was talking about when he spoke upon the disease of me within the locker room of the New York Giants. And then all of a sudden, things start to trickle out. Saquon Barkley's not happy. The negotiations aren't going right. They didn't even mention Xavier McKinney on Hard Knocks just to let that guy walk with nothing. Didn't say a word. You could tell that there was really no contract offer made, and the Green Bay Packers go out there and pay him $17 million a year. How come we don't operate like the Philadelphia Eagles do, where we push contracts with void years into the future to allow us to be able to have the right surrounding pieces around a quarterback to win games? It doesn't make sense. And K4M the Great says we traded Odell a month before drafting Daniel Jones, which is actually worse. Yeah, it is, man. It is. And look at the league right now. And listen, I'm old school, man. I've watched a lot of playoff football in my 41 years on this earth. When it gets cold, you have to be able to rely on the running back. I watched Ryan Tannehill go out there and win a playoff game where he only threw the ball like 11 times, and then he showed up the following week and only threw it like 15 times. How do you think they do that? Obviously through the running game. And when you have a quarterback that can aid the running game along with foundation at the running back position, it's a win-win situation for you. Look at all the teams that are atop the NFL right now in rushing. Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Ravens, Washington Commanders. All these teams have a dual-threat quarterback that can pick up yards with his legs. So for me, it made sense to pay Saquon. It'd be only because you paid Daniel Jones. And then you brought in a bunch of other guys to try to rebuild and win now. You tried to skip the rebuild and do this a quick cut corners like we were talking about with this new age of player now, right? How these young boys, how they treat the game and how they're a little bit overprivileged. Joe Schoen tried to cut corners, and then in return, we're seeing it. We're reaping the lack of benefits from it right now. And that's unfortunate. So for me, it was always keep Saquon, right? I understood why they wanted to get rid of him because they told us they were in the rebuild. But everything they did not scream they were in the rebuild. I might have been saying this wrong. Chris Calith, maybe it's Calith. I think I was saying Kalaith last time I said it. But Chris Calith coming in with the $5 super chat one time. He says Saquon was valuable off the field. He was the leader for the Giants. The locker room is currently in shambles. Leadership can't be replaced easily. And these are the things we're seeing. You know, you allowed pretty much both your main captains on each side of the ball, who are each all-pro players, to walk in free agency. Saquon Barkley got 1,500 rushing yards right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, he might not have been able to do that here with the Giants. I think it would have been worth it to pay him just to keep him here so we don't got to watch him within our division rushing for 1,500 yards during an MVP campaign for Saquon Barkley. It's all puzzling. It's all very puzzling. And Xavier McKinney has 7 interceptions on the year. The New York Giants defense has 1 interception on the year. We watched Leonard Williams take a pick 6 back to the house on Sunday. He's got the same amount of interceptions that the New York Giants do on the year. He's got more interceptions than any defensive backs on the New York Giants. You can't make this shit up. And this is facts right here, Chris. Like, I think people overlook leadership. And, you know, a lot of people's excuse about Saquon Barkley was, well, we weren't winning games when he was here. You got to point that finger at the organization because they are the ones that failed to put the necessary weapons around Saquon Barkley and his quarterback to be able to win games. Who would have knew that if you put good players around good players, in return, they make each other great? And look at what Saquon is doing with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a shame. It's a shame right now. It's a shame. And On Wheels 44 says, I moved on, to be honest. He also said, forget them, in my opinion. Like, I cover the team, so I'm not going to forget them. You know, I started this podcast in 2019. The amount of times that we have said Odell Beckham Jr. on this podcast, I mean, it's unfathomable how many times we have said that. So many times that in my first year here, shout out to the homie Nick DeWick, he sent me a signed Odell Beckham Jr. jersey. And when he told me he had a gift for me, I 100% knew it was going to be an Odell something. I knew it. I'm the kind of person that I do harp on the past because even Joe Shane said this. The past is a great indicator of the future. And if you see these guys making all these wrong moves time after time after time again, I don't understand how somebody could just say move on from it and forget about it. And that's just me. I'm not up here. I'm not going to tell you how to fan. And I'll never tell anybody get over it or just move on. I see these kind of statements being made on social media. I'm just like, what's up with y'all? Like, why? Like, if somebody wants to look at the game a certain way, let them look at the game a certain way. Chime in, have your opinion on that opinion that they have. Absolutely. But I'm not going to be up here telling people what they need to do. That's just not my style. And for me, I'm going to harp on this. I told y'all this when Saquon went to the Eagles. When we were looking at Hard Knocks and I was doing the Hard Knocks recaps every week on YouTube and doing them on Bleacher Report. And the comments came out from Joe Shane where he said, yeah, I think that, you know, Saquon is worth about $7 million on the market. And Chris Rossetti said, you sure? Are you sure that a Super Bowl contending team like the Philadelphia Eagles wouldn't pay a guy like Saquon Barkley somewhere around $12 or $13 million? The fact that we have a guy who is in a lesser position in the front office telling our general manager these statements, wow, our owner is literally saying, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping at night if Saquon Barkley goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. How can we not use this data moving forward? So for me, I got to talk about Saquon. That's just what it is. And hey, fault me for it, hate me for it. It's not going to change. I got to keep it funky with y'all. Y'all know over here on Authentic and the Beard, we just keep it real. We just going to talk about the topics that, one, people don't want to talk about, the topics that people are scared to talk about. That's just what we do over here. Let me see. I saw Chris P said something that a lot of people were talking about. So Chris P says, everyone keeps saying that Saquon wouldn't have the same type of season here as in Philadelphia, but we will never know. Yeah. And, you know, Giants fans have done this over the years. We literally used a hypothetical situation as reasoning to keep Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback on this roster for 6 years, that he doesn't have enough offensive line help, that he doesn't have enough weapons, that he didn't have the play caller, that he didn't have the head coach, that we didn't draft the necessary weapons to bring in around him, that we didn't bring in the right free agent wide receivers and acquisitions around him. Years later, rebuilt this offensive line 2 times and it didn't work. Brought in guys like Kenny Galladay, drafted Kadarius Toney, brought in Darren Waller, brought in John Ross, Kyle Rudolph, brought in all these moves after the fact, drafted Malik Nabers, and the shit still didn't work. I cannot sit up here and use a hypothetical situation when there's proof right in front of our own two eyes that Saquon Barkley is literally the best running back in the NFL right now. And we just allowed him to walk. We didn't trade him. We didn't franchise tag him again. We didn't extend him. We literally just allowed him to walk and allowed our division rival, who's been owning us over the past couple of seasons. We have not won in Philadelphia since 2013. We're talking about over a decade it has been since the New York Giants have won in Philadelphia. And we just allow our running back to walk right over there and not only destroy the league week in and week out. When Devonta Smith is down, Saquon Barkley is still there. When A.J. Brown is down, Saquon Barkley is still there. When they lost Jordan Mailata and they had to put him on IR, Saquon Barkley still eating. When Lane Johnson's not in the lineup, Saquon Barkley still eating. When Mekhi Becton is banged up in the interior portion of their offensive line, Saquon Barkley still eating. Come on, man. We couldn't have made this up. We couldn't have made this up. And I knew that it was going to be very intriguing covering the NFC East with Saquon playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I had no idea this dude would be doing the kind of damage that he is doing right now. And Chris Peace, you dropping facts right here. I Am Jarrell says, I hate the way that Joe Shane walk. I hate the way that he talks. I hate the way that he dressed. Yo, was that the comments that DMX had about Drake? I think that's what he said. Yeah, when somebody ain't doing a job right, like you ever worked with somebody in the same business, you go to work with these dudes every day and they just constantly messing up at work, and it just get to the point where it's exactly what Jarrell is saying right here. Like they just get on your nerves. They open their mouth to speak and you just shut the hell up. That's how you feeling. Let me see. Okay, Chris says I said his name correctly this time. Thank you. That's what's up. Chris Calith. I think that's what it is. That's a tough one, man. Prince Castro says, nope, it was all DJ's fault. Live with it. I like that. Let me see. AFN 40 says that Josh Jacobs took one look at us and said, nope. Yeah, the Giants ain't going nowhere. Anybody with a brain between their two ears knows that. And it's not the kind of, destination you want to come to as a player who's in free agency. You just don't. Let me see. Did we get another super chat here? I think we did. Yeah, big shout out to Chef Oz one time in the building for the $5 super chat. Okay. Chef Oz says, Shane has set us back worse than Dave Gettleman did. At least Gettleman knew how to draft. We are screwed for the next 3 to 4 years at least. God help us, LOL. Yeah, it's bad, man. It's bad. And, the only benefit that the New York Giants are going to get from this is a fourth-place schedule next year. So if we do go out there and draft a quarterback, address some of these holes on the roster, who knows? Maybe they can, at least get back in the right direction and pull a bit of a Washington Commanders type of situation, maybe. Because I don't think the Washington Commanders are as good of a team as their record really indicates. I think the fourth place schedule will really help them out. But that could go for almost every team in the NFC East right now. I mean, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles on this, 8-game winning streak. 5 of those games came against teams that were under 500. Now, as of late, it's almost like those first 5 games were kind of like a beta test for them because the last 3 games have been against teams that are at least 500 or better, and they have fared extremely well. So, I do think that the Commanders they're a sketchy team right now, but they can go out there and take care of teams they should beat, like the Tennessee Titans, like they did on Sunday. So shout out to them. But yeah, Gettleman, I'm almost at the point where I would say that Dave Gettleman was a better general manager than Joe Shane. I'm almost at that point. I want to see what happens for the rest of this season, and if these guys get a shot at a 4th draft, what ends up happening there. But big shout out to Chef Oz, man. I appreciate you, fam. Big shout out to Jalen Ware one time in the building. I think that's my first time seeing Jalen in the building one time with the $1.99 super chat. Okay. Jalen says, can't wait till Cam Ward hits leak over the middle. Jalen, I would love nothing more than to see Cam Ward in a New York Giants uniform. Cam has been on my radar for about 3 seasons now. Shout out to the homie Stan for putting me on to Cam Ward way back when when he first transferred over to Washington State. Man, I've always loved this kid's skill set, his ability to stay calm in the pocket. I feel like he can make most of the throws, good touch on his throws, scrambles to find players open down the field, man. You know, once he escapes and evades in the pocket, he still keeps his eyes downfield. The arm talent reminds me of something similar to a Patrick Mahomes, possibly like a Caleb Williams, you know, being able to make these off-angle type of off-platform throws and whatnot. So I'm a big fan of Cam Ward and took a tough loss this past weekend. But Cam Ward is the kind of guy that I think, you know, right now I have Cam Ward at QB1, and I think he would be the guy that could be a difference maker for the New York Giants and get that true dynamic playmaker at the quarterback position and a guy that would hold Malik Nabers accountable. I think right now we don't have a quarterback. I don't think this. I know this. We don't have a quarterback on the roster right now to hold Malik Nabers and the rest of these wide receivers accountable for some of the mistakes that they're making on the field. So it's been tough. It's been tough. But shout out Jalen, man. Appreciate you pulling up, rocking out with us today. I'm not sure if this is your first time in the mix with us. I don't recognize the name, but big shout out to you, man, and welcome to the gang if it is your first time. All right, let me see where else we at here. I'm going to catch up down at the bottom here. Chaz G says, I think and hope that Joe has humbled himself after this debacle and is now listening to the rest of the room. Last draft was a vast improvement. I just like the way that sounds. Like, you know, as a writer, last draft was a vast, it sounds like some Eminem bars. Last draft was a vast improvement. He says, I think this draft will be more the same. I hope so. The Giants need to be in position. Like I said, them top 2 picks are important for us to get. And this is going to be a very interesting draft. If the Giants indeed don't get one of the top 2, top 3 picks, it's going to be an interesting draft. And I don't know the direction that Joe Schoen will take, if he will bypass drafting a quarterback in this draft and try to maybe address it later on down the line. We'll see. Talking Eco says Ward will undoubtedly hold Leak accountable. He is a leader. Seeing him in Miami and guys gravitate towards him. That's a fact. That's a fact, man. There's a lot of evidence out there on Cam Ward. Chris P says, Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders. I don't care because either would be an upgrade to the quarterback room over what we've seen in the past 6 years. It's a good point right there. Kevin the PRF says, in my opinion, Leak is a terrible shorthand nickname. I never really liked it either. I don't like Leak. I saw my dog, license plate guy, had a jersey that said Leak on the back of it, and it had like 9 E's. I was just like, how do we determine how many E's are in Leak? Like, I don't know. This is kind of interesting here. Dean said, dream scenario, Barkley gets MVP or Offensive Player of the Year, McKinney gets Defensive Player of the Year, and Wilson gets a Super Bowl with the Steelers. At that point, you got to banish Joe Schoen. And a lot of Giants fans are going to tell you that, they don't want to see Saquon get the MVP. They don't want to see, nothing like that. And for me, I'm right there with you. The Giants are 2-10. I've always wanted to see Saquon Barkley do well, and this is an amazing moment, seeing him, and everything in the universe just align for him, and having, being able to put his best foot forward, man, and show what he's capable of doing. And, it just reminds me of the comments that Frank Gore was saying to Joe Schoen at the Senior Bowl. This guy has talent, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, Saquon is doing Saquon-like things. He's doing things on the football field that only a player of his caliber could do. And the one thing that Dave Gettleman was right about is that Saquon Barkley is absolutely a generational talent. Absolutely. Mr. Mini Guy says, I'm guessing 9 E's because he wore 9 during the preseason. I like that. I like that. The Ball Walker says Leak himself has a chain with that nickname. It has 2 E's on it. Yeah, that's the part that was interesting to me. I mean, you're obviously not going to get, dripped out with a big ass chain that has like 9 E's on it. But the jersey had like 9 or 10 E's. So I was extremely confused about that. Chris Kaleth says, Shane Bowen needs to be fired after this season. The defense has regressed so much. Yeah, and not from like a ranking standpoint. Like when you look at some of the numbers, like against the pass, against the run, they're about just as bad. But just from the eye test, the defense has regressed. That's a fact right there. I Am Jarrell says, I really like Cam, but I can also see Shedeur being perfect for New York. He's been under the microscope his whole life. I wouldn't mind either quarterback. I'm with you. I would take Shedeur Sanders in a heartbeat as the quarterback for the New York Giants. Cam Ward just so happens to be quarterback 1, and I don't think it's like by a big step. I think these quarterbacks are very close. And we'll see. We'll see come draft time. There's going to be more data out there, more all 22 tape from college football as well. And I can't wait to look at some of that stuff. Like, I'm guilty of looking at more of Cam Ward's games as well. Like, I looked at some all 22 of Cam Ward last year. I've watched just about every one of his games this year. And I need to do the same for Shedeur Sanders. And somebody had asked me on Twitter if I was going to be chopping up all the games from Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And I will go back and do that during the time between the offseason and the draft. We'll have all those videos up. I might even I've been thinking about just taking a break, doing some of the weekly stuff for the Giants to me, because the season is just like pretty much all but over, and taking some of that time to dig into the draft and kind of get like a little bit of an early, look into some of these prospects and whatnot, and get some early information out there for all of y'all. But we'll see. We'll see. Big shout out to Dean one time for the $1.99 super chat. Dean says, if we had Barkley, Nabers, and Russ, the offense could cook. Not many people have talked about this, man, but this is a really good point. And I always wanted to see what Saquon Barkley would look like with a weapon of the caliber of like an Odell Beckham. And I don't think that Malik Nabers is quite what Odell was his rookie year. He's near that. It would have been nice to see Barkley and Malik Nabers and, having Daniel Jones at the quarterback position with that many weapons around him. Like, Daniel has never had that many weapons, and, just to see if it could have worked out. But with Russell Wilson there, I mean, that's more weaponry than what the Pittsburgh Steelers have right now. Like, I don't look at Pat Freiermuth as like an elite tight end in this league. He's not a drastic difference maker of what Theo Johnson could be for this offense, right? George Pickens, Malik Nabers, about the same caliber type of wide receiver, if you ask me. And then the 2s and the 3s over there, you got Austin with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I think it's Van Jefferson as the 3. Our wide receivers can rival that, so that's a good point. Our offense could be moving like that. And you see the difference in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense going from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. They're now able to truly stretch the field and have like a real deal passing attack. So it's a great point, man. I might have to take to Twitter with a post about something like this. This is a good one. And we got another one from the homie Bergs. What's going on, Bergs? Hope all is well. With the $4.99 super chat, Berg says, letting an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year candidate walk for free is an all-time fireable offense. Seriously, in never get a GM job again territory. That's not an overreaction, Bergs. That's 100% right there. Like, I'm trying to think of a situation that is similar to this in recent history in the NFL. Like, a lot of people have questioned me when I post stuff about Saquon Barkley, and they say, how come everybody's not as mad at the Tennessee Titans for allowing Derrick Henry to walk in free agency? And there's one thing that kind of stands out to me is that Derrick Henry is a bit of an older running back, right? Saquon Barkley was just turning 27 years old, so he's got a good 3 to 4 years on Derrick Henry. So I kind of understand it when you're committing to the rebuild like the Tennessee Titans were doing, and now they even got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. So it really shows you how truly committed to the rebuild they are. Damn, a guy who really didn't pan out, man, is Treylon Burks. Like, I don't know what happened to that guy. I haven't heard his name this year. Like, has he been on IR or something? Maybe somebody in the chat will let me know, because I have not heard Treylon Burks' name all damn season. But this is a fireable offense. Like, I can't think about this when you allowed your best weapon and your best defensive player to walk in free agency. Like, yeah, this is a never get a GM job again territory. I like how you put that, Bergs. That's good stuff right there. Let me make sure that's the last super chat before I get off into a couple more comments, and then we'll get off into these giant overreactions here and get y'all out of here in some relatively decent time here. Let me see here. Cutter Bang is in the building. Cutter Bang said, to be honest, hindsight is 2020. I don't mind letting them walk. McKinney was not even close to the top safety in the league when he is that. You really think that? And Barkley was never part of the rebuild, although that hurt more. I disagree with you. There, in no world was Xavier McKinney not a top 10 safety. In no world. Maybe coming off that ATV accident, things started to look a little bit dicey there, but McKinney been a dog, bro. And you got to understand, he's surrounded by shit players. And I don't think that this is a hindsight situation. And it's for me, especially because like these conversations are just so vivid in my memory because we actively have these conversations every day. Shout out to Bass, shout out to Rob, shout out to my dog, Charlie, and everybody else who hosts New York Giants spaces, because those are the reasons why we get to talk about this every day, right? And in real time, literally when the trade deadline came around last season, we were talking about trading these guys. You got to understand this. Look, the Giants were 7-1 or 7-2 near the deadline in 2022. They came back in 2023 and started off 2-8 with Xavier McKinney's contract expiring and Saquon Barkley's contract expiring. This isn't a hindsight situation, Cutter Bang. This happened in real time where people were like, trade them now. We stink. And John Mara literally came out and said, we aren't an organization that goes towards the tanking, and we're going to try to win every game. And that's why they kept Saquon Barkley on the roster. I can't agree that the hindsight is 2020, but not in this case. This was in real time. Shout out to Six Don't Miss. Six Don't Miss says, what up, Authentic? I love Dable, but we can all agree Joe has to go. And if Dable and him are tied to the hip, then sayonara. It's the best way for me to sum it up. Like, I think that Brian Dable is a really good coach, right? It's not showing this year, obviously. It's just not showing this year. But if they're tied at the hip, see you later, man. I love how you put the sayonara. Is that how you spell sayonara? I don't even know, but sayonara, man. That's what it is. That's a fact right there. Cutterbang said, like Nubin, which has been a good pick in my opinion. He's a good draft pick, but the problem is when you draft a guy like him in the second round, you then expect him to get thrusted in the lineup and fill the shoes of a guy like Xavier McKinney. Do you think that right now Tyler Nubin is near the safety that Xavier McKinney is? Our secondary has 0 interceptions on the year. Xavier McKinney has 7. He's got 1 in every game, but like 3 games or something like that. Yeah, I like Tyler Nubin. I think he's a good player. I liked him coming out too. Definitely the top safety on the board, and I like Andrew Phillips, but those are the kind of moves that should be made when you have guys on the roster like an Xavier McKinney. Imagine a Tyler Nubin and an Xavier McKinney at the safety position right now with depth guys like Jason Pinnock, right? And Dane Belton. It would look a lot better. This is why it's important to keep your own and build teams through a homegrown type of philosophy, especially with guys you're hitting on that aren't in the first round. Xavier McKinney was a second-round pick, and so was Tyler Nubin. It's like you're restarting the cycle for no reason. Berg says that having a quarterback that needs good running back play to succeed, then letting one of the no doubt best running backs in the league walk for nothing will never make any sense no matter how you cut it. And I think that, like, this is why I called it brainwashing earlier in the show. People have been brainwashed into this thinking that, oh man, don't pay running backs. Look at the Super Bowl results, right? Like, no running back has been paid and that team has won the Super Bowl. So really, people are attesting success to only the Super Bowl. So are we looking at teams that have gotten close as that's not success? We're talking about a 2-10 football team here, y'all. We're not talking about a team that's trying to get over the hump like the Dallas Cowboys were last season, winning 12 games, 3 straight seasons, and then get to the playoffs and keep losing. That's not the story of the New York Giants. The New York Giants are a bad football team. So when you allow good players to walk in free agency in the peak prime of their career, I'll add, because Saquon Barkley, some might not admit it at the beginning of the season, he was at his peak at 26 years old. Xavier McKinney, even younger than that, in his peak. And you allow these guys to walk in free agency and get nothing. That's, to me, the biggest problem is that you got nothing from it. You did not even think about considering to trade these guys. And this has been the philosophy of Joe Schoen since he got here. It's been the philosophy of Joe Schoen since he got here, y'all. And you're not going to be able to build unless you get somehow lucky and stumble into it. You're not going to be able to build the necessary roster to compete for championships like this. You're just not. And you need a unicorn at the quarterback position. Yeah, and Chaz G says McKinney is hitting his prime now. Some of us knew he'd be this. Yeah, a lot of us did, man. A lot of us did. McKinney has been playing top-notch football for incredibly too long to be a player that you just allow to walk in free agency because you deem safety as a position that does not have value, along with running back. What? And then there's teams like the Baltimore Ravens that go, screw the value that the NFL deems that these players have. We're going to draft a Kyle Hamilton. You got teams like the Detroit Lions that go, we're going to draft a Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't care what the league is saying. You got teams like the Philadelphia Eagles that go, the Giants are letting their best player walk in free agency. Go get me that guy. It's that simple. Why do we overthink it? Why are we allowing great football players to walk in free agency? It's that simple. It truly is. Shout out Anthony one time in the building. Anthony says Aiden O'Connell might be the key to us getting the #1 pick. They played great against Kansas City. Also, week 18 against the Eagles scares me. We already know they letting us win that one. It's a possibility on the Eagles because right now they are in front of the division. The Commanders are sitting at 8 wins. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are now sitting at 10 wins. So they got a couple of games up on the Commanders, but the Commanders do have a very favorable schedule down the stretch here. So I am hoping that last week's game matters for home field advantage and the Philadelphia Eagles come out and put their best foot forward with their best roster on the field. We'll see. Week 18 is a little bit of ways out. We'll see. Aiden O'Connell might be the key to us getting the #1 pick. They played great against Kansas City. Yeah, and right now they do have a higher pick than us right now in the draft. I think the Raiders are sitting at pick #2 because of strength of schedule. So we are going to need them to lose some games. To me, hands down, the New York Giants are the worst team in the NFL right now. If we played the Raiders, I think we'd lose. If we played the Jaguars, I'm pretty sure we'd lose. 13th Giant says, it's crazy how we constantly are drafting for need and not even a need for depth. Yeah, that's crazy. And the reason why you drafting for need is because you're allowing players to walk. And that toppled with signing the wrong guys. Because now you're going to be drafting a quarterback because you signed the wrong quarterback. And you drafted a tight end in Theo Johnson last year because you traded for the wrong tight end in Darren Waller when everybody in the NFL knew that guy was going to retire. Same thing with Xavier McKinney, drafting for Tyler Nubin, not addressing cornerback, allowing Adoree Jackson to his contract to expire, and then actually bringing him back, which was weird in the first part, but you're drafting for need because you're not attaining homegrown players, and you're also not hitting on the draft as well. Let me see what else we got here. Welvin says that Tay never been that good, though. He just didn't develop this year. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, people were thinking that Deonte Banks was going to make this big leap, and I didn't see it. I had question marks, and people were kind of, I hung my hat on this one stat from PFF that Emmanuel Forbes, who has just been released by the Washington Commanders, actually, of all cornerbacks that have played any snap, he was ranked 188th on PFF per grade. Deonte Banks was ranked 183rd, and I was like, that is not adding up. Something is not right there, and a lot of people didn't like that I kept bringing that stat up, but yeah, Deonte Banks looks more like a cornerback too, or, he just needs a little bit more time. Like, I'm not going to fault the player for being put in a position to take that leap a little bit too early in his second year, when if you would have just built the roster the proper way and brought in some veteran players a la a Stephon Gilmore or another cornerback that could have maybe been the leader of this cornerback room, then maybe Tay Banks would be an understudy and he wouldn't have all this pressure on him right now. But instead, Joe Shane wanted to put pressure on a lot of these young players in Deonte Banks, in Tyler Nubin, in Jason Pinnock, in Malik Nabers, in Tyrone Tracy, and all these guys. And it's just backfired. Shout out to Keith Wilson one time in the building with the $4.99 super chat. He says, salute, OG. Mario got me down with my Canes, the Cuban Ryan Day. All offense, no defense like last year, LSU. NY should take Cam and Damian Martinez. I got to do a little bit more digging into Damian Martinez. All for Cam Ward. That was a tough loss for y'all because offensively you played well. I think Cam Ward had 2 touchdowns on the day, no interceptions, but defense obviously being a problem there. And forcing your quarterback to be in a position where he has to score on every possession. This is not a way to win games consistently. So yeah, it's tough, man. But I'm hoping that we do land Cam Ward. Draft season's gonna be here faster than we know it. Big shout out to Keith Wilson, man, for supporting the channel. I appreciate you, my dog. Joe Schmo 84 said, yo, scroll up, check that super chat. Let me see. Did Joe send one in, or was he talking about Keith? Oh, yeah, Joe Schmo did send one in. Big shout out to Joe Schmo. I appreciate it. It's crazy how in the midst of all them chats, I just can find that, but big shout out to Joe Schmo one time in the building with the $4.99 super chat. He says, we don't have time to groom general managers and coaches. Let's get some experience in here, at least at coach. Don't want these two to even smell next year's draft. And I understand this sentiment here, right? Like a lot of Giants fans are saying Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen deserve to go out there and draft their quarterback and try to groom their quarterback and develop a quarterback. But at the end of the day, I've been saying this, man, like we've seen Brian Daboll with the franchise quarterback in Josh Allen, so we know what he's capable of. He can win a lot of games with a good quarterback at the helm. Joe Schoen, the inexperience is starting to show. And I think that Joe Schoen is more of a kind of like more of a salary cap kind of guy that you could keep on a staff, but is not cut out to be the general manager. I'm 100% in agreement with you here. Go out there and get somebody that's experienced. Head coach especially. I wouldn't mind even bringing in Bill Belichick off the strength of just the experience. I know a lot of people don't want Bill Belichick, but I would bring in him or Mike Vrabel and be totally fine with it, being that these guys have a track record of winning games, understanding personnel, and they have the experience, most importantly. So I'm right there with you, Joe. And I appreciate you bringing the super chat to my attention. I don't know how I missed that. I don't know how I missed that, bro. But shout out to you, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel, my dog. All right. So let's get right into it, man. Let's talk about some of these giant overreactions here. And I see OG Knockout in the building. What's going on, fam? I can't do a giant overreaction without highlighting something for my dog, OG Knockout. OG Knockout said Joe Schoen needs to put his pride aside, especially with the mediocre draft picks. If Joe Schoen thought Daniel Jones was the guy, I don't want him drafting a quarterback. I'm right there with you, my dog. I'm right there with you. Real Cold G said, is it fair to say that Josh Allen has been better under Joe Brady than he was under Daboll? Very fair. And that's the puzzling part about it, is that Josh Allen has been able to succeed with, 3 or 4 offensive coordinators now? And Brian Daboll has not been able to succeed truly without Josh Allen. Mark B said, mind you, this is all happening with Daboll as the play caller. And yeah, Mike Kafka's name has not been mentioned that much. Chris P says, hot take. Nick Saban as general manager of the New York Giants. Nick Saban knows talent. That's for damn sure. Man, I got to sit up in Coach Loxley's office, man, and see those national championship rings from Alabama, man, and them things, man, in person, they just bling a certain way. And Saban, I would be all for that. I would be totally for that. He's a guy that understands football. That's a fact. Lucas is in the building. What's going on, Lucas? Hope all is well, my dog, across the pond. Lucas said how Schoen needs to start listening to the people around him. Or Joe Schoen needs to start listening to the people around him. That's a fact. That is definitely a fact, man. And Chaz G says that Joe has been to several Colorado practices. He wants Shadur, and as do I. I would imagine that says. I don't think you meant to put the doo-doo I. But shout out Chaz G one time in the building. Cutterbang had a response. He said, but yeah, Joe thinks he has 10 seasons to turn it around. The Newman and Tracy picks are going to be great replacements in the future, but maybe 2 seasons too late. And still lacking depth. That's the biggest problem. Still lacking depth. That's the part that really hurts, is that Joe Schoen is a guy that operates where he thinks he only needs to address the starters on the roster and that he doesn't need to address the depth, and that's been a problem since he's been here. Let me see. Let's get off into these giant overreactions, though, man, and I'll get y'all up out of here. We're going to fly through these too. I got 3 giant overreactions here on the day. Let's kind of go over the rules for the people who have not been here on a giant overreaction before. We're going to put up statements on the screen, and if you deem that statement on the screen as somebody kind of losing it a little bit and it is an overreaction, I want you to put an O in the chat to represent that you think that their statement is an overreaction. If you think the statement on the screen is accurate, I want you to put a U in the chat to represent that you are taking the under. And if you think the statement on the screen needs a little bit of more time before you can truly come to a determination on your opinion on it, you can put a P in the chat to represent that you are taking the push. All right, so without further ado, let's get off into this first giant overreaction. This one actually came from the game. This is going to be a clip from Tom Brady speaking on the Daniel Jones situation before he was released by the New York Giants.
I don't know how the whole situation went down, but to think that you would ask for a release from a team that committed a lot to you is maybe different than I would have handled that. I always felt I wanted to get the trust and respect of my teammates regardless situation, knowing that I was trying to do the best I could for the team because that was the most important thing.
Clock almost gets crushed that time by Parsons, and he got away from it. It's incomplete.
There's just some different things that happen in the NFL, and everyone makes individual choices, and I think we're all at points in our career face different challenges. I faced them in college, and some things didn't go the way I wanted, but the people that mattered the most to me were the guys in the locker room. I showed up every day. I don't care if they asked me to be scout team safety, be scout team quarterback. I was going to do whatever I could to help the team win.
So that's Tom Brady. He said, I don't know how that whole situation went down, but to think that you'd ask for a release from a team that committed a lot to you is maybe different from how I would have handled it. And a lot of people have gave Tom Brady a lot of pushback, you know, talking about his arrogance, talking about how Tom Brady is the guy that quit on the New England Patriots and ended up going down there to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win a Super Bowl and all. You know, just there's been a bunch of fiasco around this conversation. Tom Brady also went on to say, I always wanted to get the trust and respect from my teammates, regardless of the situation, knowing that I was trying to be the best I could for the team because that was the most important thing. I think what's important here when judging Tom Brady as well, right, is that if you commit to a season with the team, you should finish out that season with the team. And I do think that it was a bit of a cowardly move by Daniel Jones to ask for his release, but he was put in a tough situation where his back was against the wall. I saw a Twitter user say, this was from @17HockeyStud, who has had some crazy remarks and crazy shit on a lot of my comments on Twitter. I think I got this guy muted, actually, but I did see his comment. He said, Brady never stops complaining or never stops complimenting himself. DJ volunteered to play safety. There's no way Tom Brady was a more loyal teammate than Daniel Jones. Ask his baby mama. Tom would have looked for an exit soon after playing behind our offensive line. Just a Brady cheap shot to pump himself up. Now, what do you expect from somebody who is the best quarterback that this game has ever seen? Now, Jones was benched, placed on the practice squad as a safety. All that is true. And Patricia Traynor ended up writing an article for Sports Illustrated that had a lot of revealing information in it. She said, according to Mike Florio, the Giants suggested that Jones stay away from the team's facility and that Jones would still collect the remainder of his 2024 salary. The reasoning behind the Giants' request was to avoid any possibility of Jones suffering an injury while on the team's property, which could trigger the $23 million injury guarantee for 2025. However, Jones wanted to remain involved with the team, doing whatever he could to help. The Giants, meanwhile, couldn't force Jones to stay away by rule. As Florio also reported, the team then greatly reduced Jones' role in practice and his weightlifting activity in the team's facility to avoid any possibility of the injury that might have triggered the $23 million injury guarantee in his contract for 2025. Because of all that, Jones felt it was best to simply request his release. So when it comes to this topic here, I kind of got to just take a push on it because I don't think there was anything wrong with Tom Brady's comments. All he is saying is head down, be a hard worker, continue to show up, do what you can in whatever capacity that you can for the team until the year is finished. And honestly, what is Daniel Jones going to get out of this situation? Asking for a release, signing with the Minnesota Vikings. Is maybe Sam Darnold goes down with an injury. Daniel Jones is still on the practice squad right now. Maybe he gets elevated, maybe plays a couple of games for the Minnesota Vikings this season at best. So for me, I don't see anything wrong with Tom Brady's statements. I also don't necessarily fault Daniel Jones for asking for his release because the situation kind of called for it. Like they're telling you, hey, stay at home. You're like, I don't want to stay at home. I want to contribute to the team's success. They're like, okay, well, when you come to practice, you're going to be playing safety. We're not going to have you throwing the ball. We're not going to have you doing anything that could be a detriment to you getting injured. But at the same time, I do think that this is a little bit of spoiled brat vibes from Daniel Jones as well. Understanding the situation, he didn't want to remove the injury clause because if he did remove the injury clause, I think the New York Giants probably still feel Daniel Jones out there as the starter. But because he has this injury clause in his contract, you have to at least expect why the New York Giants want you to stay at home. I think it's a tough situation for all parties involved. Let me see what the chat is talking about here and see how y'all feel about this one here. We'll go through the last couple of ones here. So we'll start off with Francis Moran. He says, it's an overreaction. Brady is wrong. I don't think Brady's wrong in this. When determining how a personal person would handle a situation, you can't be wrong. If Tom Brady says, I would have handled it like this, then that's just how he would have handled it. We won't know unless he's thrown into that exact situation. We've seen quarterbacks, though. Phil Simms was benched for a whole entire season with Jeff Hostetler at the quarterback. And Phil Simms didn't ask for a release or pout and cry about it. He went out there and he actually ended up earning and winning the starting job back and became the starter for the New York Giants after the fact. So I don't think we can say Brady's wrong. You can say you disagree with it, and it's an overreaction. I don't think you say he's wrong. He's telling you what he would have done. And he gave Daniel the benefit of the doubt. He prefaced it by saying, I don't know the whole situation. So he's just giving his comments on it. So for me, it's not that he's wrong. John says this, no reaction, says the guy that retired on his teammates. I don't have any beef with a guy retiring after 20 seasons and then coming back to play football. I don't got any beef with that. Can't front. Simeon says he's taking the push, and this is where I'm at with it. I am taking the push as well. Simeon says the team should have asked him to stay at home for the remainder of the season, if for optics, if nothing else. So that's what I said in the reports. Patricia Traynor, she pretty much said from Mike Florio that is what the news was, is that they told him, hey, we want you to stay at home and stay away from the facility. But through the contract clause, they technically can't do that. So Daniel pretty much said, I'd like to stay in the facility and help out however I can. And that's when they were like, all right, we're going to have you playing safety. And Daniel's like, I'm not about to sit up here and play safety. Walked in the mayor's office and said, can you grant me my release? Chef Oz says they didn't want him in the building at all. They didn't. Yeah, that's just what it was. And that injury clause is likely why. Chris P says taking the under, but then again, Tom Brady is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. And here, you see, this is the thing. I think that people all too often get confidence and assertiveness confused with arrogance. Like, bro, we're not talking about one of your homies, right? And this ain't directed at Chris Peace, because Chris Peace is he's bringing the good point here. We're not talking about one of your homies, bro, that's going up here and saying, I would have handled it like this. We're talking about a guy that has laced up cleats, played football at the highest level, is the GOAT of the quarterback position, has won however many, 6, 7 Super Bowls, done it all. Tom Brady has done it all. So I don't look at his comments as arrogance or he's cocky or none of that. I look at it like this guy's confident. He should be confident. If anything, Tom Brady is a little bit reserved considering he's the GOAT of the NFL. Listen, if I was the GOAT, I'll be walking around like my shit don't stink. So I look at Tom Brady like he's handling the situation pretty well. Chaz G said, I heard Daniel Jones got Chatbot to write his letter to the fans. Come on, yo. Chat GPT wrote the letter? That's crazy. OG Knockout said, it's a big overreaction. Daniel Jones left like a spoiled bitch who hasn't done shit for real. So I think OG is saying that Daniel Jones had the overreaction. Okay. Talking Eco's taking the push. I don't know the specifics of the releasing, so I can't say it. I'm right there with you, bro. Stone-faced Ninja says, why does Brady need to pump himself up? I don't think this is pumping himself up. Like, if I'm a commentator talking on football, who's a former football player who played the game at the quarterback position better than anybody has to date, how could I not talk about a quarterback situation and not relate it back to me? I don't understand. I don't understand why people think that somehow this is pumping. Why does Brady need to pump himself up? Oh, talking about Daniel fucking Jones? I don't get that, y'all. Dean says he's taking the under. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets. Big shout out my dog one time in the building says DJ was allegedly asked to stay away from the team and the team's gym. How is that cowardly to ask for a release? When things are not going your way, this is why I think it's a bit cowardly. They're paying you hell of money for the year. They paid you to come out here and be the New York Giants starting quarterback and to live up to a certain threshold of play, and you didn't do that. At the end of the day, you have this injury clause in your contract. They're going to pay you the money throughout the year for your salary. It's clear they're making a business decision trying to avoid paying you an injury clause. And they're trying to protect you being injured, so they have to pay that. So for me, I think it's a bit of a cowardly move to make a commitment to your team, to the season, and then when things aren't going your way and they put you on the bench and try to protect the injury clause, you go, oh, get me out of here. That's how I look at it. Berg says he's taking the push. He apparently wanted to help, but they told him to go home. I got to know the whole truth before making a final judgment. And I'm kind of there with you as well. I just don't. I think that there were other options for Daniel Jones instead of asking for the release. That's what I think. This is an organization, as Tom Brady said, that has done a lot for you. They stood by you when no other NFL team would have done it. Francis Moran says, if you don't know about the situation, keep your mouth shut, Brady. I mean, maybe this is just a personal thing with Francis and Tom Brady. You're on air. They ask you about the situation. I don't see any beef in him talking about it. Simeon says, then Jones can't complain. Chaz G said, I don't want Daniel Jones around either, and he was being paid too. Royal Money says he's taking the under along with Kevin the PRF. Cutter Bang is taking the push. He's a winner, and sometimes losers get hurt by the real. And just sharing his real experience because we all know he does whatever to win. Our fans hurt because we soft, just like how our team plays. Soft. I like that take, Cutter Bang. I really like that take, bro. Muhammad Ali is in the building. The champ is here. Says he's taking the under. Brought in a generational running back, revamped the offensive line, put weapons on the receiving core, went through multiple regimes, all led to the same result with 2022 being the exception. I'm right there with you, bro. D. Torres says if the reports were true, then it's a push. Cutter Bang says makes sense now how soft our team is because the fan base also became soft too. Yeah, we as a fan base, we definitely do operate a bit soft. When I see some of the comments on Twitter, I'm just like, who raised you? Like straight up. Kenny G says it's an overreaction. He says, regardless of how I feel about Daniel Jones, he never quit on the team. The day after this, report came out that the Giants told him to stay home. DJ did what Joe couldn't do, which was flat out release him. You don't think that asking for a release was technically quitting on the team, though? What I liked about him asking for the release is that it sped up the process and it forced Joe Shane to be proactive on the quarterback situation. Because now there is no, well, maybe Daniel Jones comes back next year. Maybe they restructure his contract. All of that is out the window. So I did like that part about it. But I do think he quit on his team. You know, maybe not actively as a player, but they went to Tommy DeVito as the starter, and Daniel Jones cried about it and went to the owner and said, release me. It all happened in a matter of days, too. So tough for me to say he didn't quit on his team. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says that Tom Brady would not have accepted a first-team safety scout position. You're lying. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, Tom Brady was the backup quarterback for the New England Patriots. I don't know. I really don't know. OG Knockout said, if I had the money they gave Daniel Jones, I'd be the best teammate passing out water for real. I'm already rich. I mean, yeah, like, just show up. Like, listen, I've playing football not for money in Daniel Jones' case, right? I've played on teams where I'm looking at the starter in front of me like I'm better than that dude and had to go a whole season. My freshman year on JV, I had to sit the bench the whole entire year. The quarterback who was playing above me couldn't throw the ball farther than me, couldn't throw as accurate as me, didn't have the pocket awareness that I had. The only thing that he had was that he was bigger than me. He was about 6 foot, 190. And at that time, I hadn't even hit my high school growth spurt yet. I was like 5'3", 5'4", probably like $140. And I've sat there like, damn, just sat the bench, did what I had to do all year, played scout team quarterback. I came in on Hail Mary type of plays because that particular quarterback couldn't throw the ball as far as me. So I understand what it's like to just go throughout a season and not be paid. They gave Daniel Jones $40 million. In my opinion, shut the hell up, show up to work, show up, whatever they want you to do in any capacity, do that. Take the money and figure out what's going to happen in the offseason. Unless you felt it was an advantage for you to go out there and get released early and get on a roster with the Minnesota Vikings, then all right, I feel you then. Let me see what else we got. Stoneface Ninja said, did Eli ask for a release when he was benched? No. DJ quit because he felt he deserved better, and that's fine. Just be honest. I got no beef with that take. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says the more you make and achieve, the more you want to level up. This is facts. Berg says he allegedly was willing to waive the injury clause, but the team just wanted out. All he said, she said right now. Yeah, I didn't hear that one yet. I didn't hear that they would waive the clause. That will make things very different, for sure. And OG said, my bad about the O. I meant the big U, for sure. Yeah, people kind of split on this one. Chaz G says, if Jones was black, people would think the coaches were smart for asking him to play a different position. That's a shot. Damn. And not for nothing, him playing safety could have helped him see the error in his ways at quarterback, or the error in his ways at quarterback. Chaz G out here. He said, I don't want to play the race card, but I mean. I hear you, Chaz. I hear you. Yeah, so this one looking like it's split in the room. A lot of people had a lot to say about this one. Chaz G said that Jones stormed out like a hoe. He should have played safety. Maybe he could have learned how to see the whole field being better afterwards. Wow. No Met says that if Jones were black, we would understand why he was asked for his release. It works both ways. If Jones were black, we would understand why he asked for his release. That's a whole, that is a rabbit hole I am not trying to go down. Because had Jones have been black, he wouldn't have been here for 6 years. We know that. Not here. No, there's no way that Jameis Winston would have been the starting quarterback for the New York Giants for 6 years. That's a fact. Split the room on that one, though. I like that. That's why we're here with the Giant overreaction, is to get different type of reactions to people's posts. So big shout out to y'all. I love some of the comments y'all had on that. Y'all got me thinking a little bit more about it. All right, let's get off into this next one here. These other ones, we're going to fly through them, and we actually got 4 on the day. Try to get y'all out of here in a couple here. I'm going to try to keep it under 2. We're going to see how it goes, but let's get off into the next Giant overreaction. All right, this one comes from Dan Duggan. He says, Wink had great run defenses in Baltimore. Shane Bowen had great defenses in Tennessee. Maybe it's the personnel when speaking about New York. Now, I've told y'all time and time again that the similar archetypes at the edge rusher position has been my biggest issue with this defense and the personnel, with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. We have zero depth on the defensive line outside of Azeez Ojulari. Our secondary is a bunch of ragtag type of youngins who need more experience. Our linebackers and our cornerbacks have regressed under Shane Bowen in a major way. The Giants right now are allowing 5.1 yards per carry. They're allowing 145.8 rushing yards per game. The yards per carry is dead last in the NFL. The rushing yards per game is 29th in the NFL. We're 32nd in takeaways per game at 0.29 takeaways. Teams are completing almost 70% of their completions or of their passes against the New York Giants this season, which is 29th in the NFL. And we have just 1 interception on the season. 124 of the Cowboys' 195 passing yards were on yak. That's yards after the catch. So you're talking about a bulk of the yards being after they actually got the reception, and the New York Giants struggling to make tackles. 13 penalties for 98 yards, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. Patricia Traynor tweeted out after the game on Thursday, I would be shocked if Shane Bowen survives the rest of the week. Here we are on Monday. And it just feels the New York Giants are not going to really make any crazy firings at this particular point in time, but it's absolutely the personnel. That's not to say that Shane Bowen is some great defensive coordinator, and it's not to say that we have zero talent on the defensive side of the ball, but it's absolutely personnel. You look at the personnel does not match what Shane Bowen does. The linebacker regression this year from Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden has been a real thing. And underneath Wink Martindale, when they were pretty much just, tasked with attacking the quarterback and throwing the kitchen sink at opposing quarterbacks, they fared a lot better. So for me, this statement is spot on. I'm absolutely taking the U on this one. I don't think that this is an overreaction one bit. And I'll scroll and just check a couple here. You know how I feel about this, Stephen Arch. You know how I feel about this. You know Denard Wilson was the dog. We got a bunch of U's here. U from Sebastian. Sebastian says, never seen a defense this bad since 2017, and that defense was somehow better. Berg says he's taken the under. Shane has not done well with getting rotational pieces on the defensive line, linebackers, safeties, etc. We just got Dexter and a bunch of dudes out there on defense right now. Kansan taking the under. Cutter Bang says he's taking the push. He says exactly what Talking Eco couldn't have said it better. Let me scroll back up and see what Talking Eco is saying here. Talking Eco says he's taking the push. I think it's a bit of both in terms of scheme and personnel. Shane hasn't built a team designed to stop the run, and the coaches haven't been flexible enough to cater their defenses to players. Love that. Great reasoning for you to take the push there. Love that. Muhammad Ali taking the under on this one. Liddell P says it's obvious that if Jones was black, he wouldn't have been there to begin with. That's another good point. Robert Mead says, under Coughlin, the player mandate for drafting was big, strong, fast, smart. Yeah, we need to get back to that. We absolutely need to get back to that. Stephen R. said, Bowen wanted Burns and all the defenders in the draft, so it's not personnel, it's coaching and scheme. The scheme doesn't fit. Go back to the Hard Knocks episode where Joe Shane presented at the Senior Bowl to Shane Bowen, hey, how would you feel about Brian Burns? And what you going to say, no? He's like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll take Brian Burns. Might have been better fit to go after some interior defensive line rather than addressing edge rusher. But if you look at, I mean, maybe this is just like, I don't know, just like ironically happened. The personnel that we saw in Tennessee with all them big dogs up front, whereas now, like Shane Bowen literally went from power edge rushers to speed edge rushers. Maybe that's a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe. Cutter Bang says our coaches don't adapt to our players' strengths. We are die on that hill mentality with scheme. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like we're fitting players into a scheme rather than adjusting the scheme to the players. I do agree there. John says the Commanders, Cowboys, Eagles all have athletic linebackers. Giants have Bobby, major trash. That's a good point there too. Brandon Graham out for the year for the Eagles. That stinks for them, man. Royal Money taking the under. Mr. Mini Guy says, I ain't gonna lie, I haven't watched a Giants game since week 2, but I'm gonna say you. I love that. Chaz G says, luckily this draft is deep at defensive line. I'm hoping we draft a D tackle, an edge, and a linebacker. I like that. OG Knockout said it's personnel. John Mara needs to clean house starting with himself. The Joe threw me off there for a second. And Chaz G says, in his defense, I love this pun right here. Dropping bars today, bro. In his defense, this is Bowen's first year. Love that. Kenny G says he's taking the under. I remember watching Bowen's scheme breakdown with Bobby Skinner, and he said, we do not have the same players, so do not expect the same results, specifically when referring to run defense. Absolutely. And Mobster Music coming in with the narrative. Fire Joe Shane. I ain't mad at that either. Chaz G said, Wink walking out is still haunting us, in my opinion. Our defense was formidable, borderline elite under Wink. Now we're ass. Yeah. I was upset with the Wink Martindale situation, and people didn't like it's weird. You know, most Giants fans are going to side with the side of the team. So when we parted ways with Wink Martindale, everyone sided with Dable. When we allowed Saquon to walk in free agency along with Xavier McKinney, everyone said it was the right move. When we traded Leonard Williams to the Seahawks, everyone said it was the right move. When we traded our 2nd and our 5th for Brian Burns, everyone said it was the right move. And I think that a lot of our fan base is just unwilling to really put this team under the microscope that they need to be under. Like, y'all, we need to be having petitions. We need to not be going to these games. We need to go to these games and not buy shit. We need to stop buying merchandise. We need to stop wearing our shit. We need to stop wearing these jerseys out to the store. Like, the New York Giants have they're literally still sending me emails to buy merchandise every day. I can't believe it. With how poor of a state that this team is in, they're still clawing and scratching to try to get every dollar out of these fans. Now, we need to be boycotting this team. I'm right there with that. But it seems like this one, most people kind of on the same page. I'm with y'all on this one. I miss Wink Martindale in a major way, man. I really do. I miss him in a major way. And everybody thought this Shane Bowen signing was going to be it. It's not that Shane Bowen is a bad defensive coordinator. I just think that Wink Martindale represented more what New York Giants football was actually really about. And it's unfortunate. He had a big win and a great defensive performance this past weekend. So big shout out to Wink Martindale. Let's get off into this next Giant overreaction. Now, this one, I definitely been wanting to talk about this situation for a little bit here. This one comes from Koozie Sports. He said, Malik Nabers does a lot of crying for someone who drops the ball as much as he does. Now, Malik did have a couple of drops in his game against Dallas. He had 8 receptions for 69 yards. He's 5th in the NFL right now with 7 drops on the season. Has had some clutch drops during some key moments in games, too, the Washington Commanders game being one of them. He has not scored a touchdown since week 3 when we played the Cleveland Browns. He has 116 targets on the year. That's 3rd most in the NFL. Double-digit targets in 6 of his 9 games entering this past game. And I believe he had double-digit targets in the game against Dallas. So that would be 7 of 10. Not one game under 7 targets on the entire season. He had 18 versus Washington, 15 versus Dallas, 13 versus Pittsburgh. He's averaging 9.9 yards per reception on the season. And after the game, Malik Nabers said, I don't care about the drops. It's just part of football. I don't care if I drop the ball 6 times. Keep throwing me the ball. Mike Rugg on Twitter said Malik Nabers drops a lot of passes for a guy who calls out his head coach and complains after every game. Malik Nabers now has the most catches in NFL history through a player's first 10 games. My suggestion to a young player like Malik Nabers, a guy who is just 21 years old, that I do think the New York Giants put him in a terrible situation by placing this season and putting it on his shoulders and thinking that he was going to come in here and be able to supplement for what a guy like Saquon Barkley did in this offense last season, along with Darren Waller, and thinking that all those things were going to somehow put a 21-year-old rookie wide receiver out there that was going to be able to give this New York Giants offense more productivity than it had in the previous years. My advice to him would be to just keep your head down, bro, and keep working. Stop talking. Stop giving the media the stuff that they want to be able to run with some of these quotes from you and turn them into clickbait type of articles. You're a guy that is getting the ball way too much to be complaining about not getting the ball. That's how I see it. Let me see what the chat is talking about, and then we'll move on to the next Giant overreaction. I'll just scroll a couple of back. And I told y'all we was going to split the room today. Let me see. We'll start with Tarondrick Rainey one time. Let's go, Francis. I see Francis was a couple up here. Francis Moran says, Big U. Is Shane using his scheme without the required talent? So he's talking about the last one there. I think that's facts, 100%. Berg says he's taking the under. Can't ask to be fed, then show up with no appetite. I like that. Tarondrick Rainey says it's an overreaction. Well, he's a dog. Kareem Yee is in the building. What's going on, my G? Hope all is well with you. Welvin says he's taking the under. Buddy hasn't proved anything in the league yet. I'm right there with you. I had a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan who's a fan of the show chime in the comment section on the last Giant overreaction. And he talked about Mike Evans and how Mike Evans, through his first year, had to endure the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being absolutely terrible. They were 2-14 that season. And he said, the surprising part about that year to me with Mike Evans was that you did not hear one complaint from Mike Evans the entire season. You look at that guy now, his record's going to come to an end, but he's had 1,000 yards in every season since he's entered the league. That's what I want to see out of Malik Nabers. OG Knockout said, bro, watch the Giants draft Jackson Dart or Carson Beck, and they might draft them in the 2nd round and draft Travis Hunter in the 1st if they get the 1st pick. That wouldn't surprise me, bro. Not one bit. John said he's taking the push. He does drop in crucial moments, but he's a rookie. But then again, other LSU wide receivers doesn't have a drop issue like Leak. Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is eating right now. That dude is playing great football. He's not complaining about the situation that is surrounding him at all. And for me, I just think a lot of this screams diva from Malik Nabers. I like the player a lot. I'm a big fan of his game. I mean, you go back, I actually went back and I looked at the first Dallas matchup and the double move that he ran in that game, how he just had that cornerback looking like somebody tied his laces together. This dude is extremely talented, and I think he can be one of those ones. I do think somebody needs to be in his ear. He needs an OG in his ear, somebody in his camp just being like, yo, George Pickens had to learn. You look at George Pickens when he goes in front of the press now, how he speaks. He's not giving them no bait, none. And Malik Nabers could definitely take a page out of his book. Cutter Bang says it's an overreaction. He can cry. He really liked that. I cry probably 10 times more and I'm on the couch. Like I said, for me, it's just the type of comments that you're saying. We literally saw Malik Nabers throw his coach under the bus, and he hadn't even played 10 games yet. I'm not for that kind of behavior. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says he's taking the push. I can understand the perspective. He had to do more. However, we all have a voice. He just has to hold himself accountable also. That's a fact. That's a fact right there. Like, this is what I see from Malik Nabers. A guy that when he's complaining, he's never putting any of the accountability on himself. He's the guy that says, go look at the target tape. I was open. He's a guy that says, it's not the quarterback. It's not me. I'm getting open. Go ask Brian Dable. This is a guy that said, how am I supposed to make an impact on the game when I'm not getting the ball until we're down 30-0? These are all comments that I think could be better off just not said. That's how I look at them. Deaton Shelton says he's taking the push, though his drop rate is 8.5%. Going an entire half without any targets is criminal for a wide receiver one. I agree. You got to find ways to scheme up your wide receiver one and get him the ball, but he's not the first wide receiver one that went a whole half without getting a target. I've seen things like that happen to CeeDee Lamb throughout the years. I've seen things like that happen to A.J. Brown throughout the years in covering the NFC East. And you can go out there and say, yeah, I want to be more involved in the game plan early on. But when you go up there smacking your gum, talking lackadaisical, calling the media bruh, we know the vibes, man. We know the vibes. I'm smart enough to understand the demeanor that he's presenting to the media. And I don't think he has to do that. Kansas Zero's also taking a push. I'm not going to lie. The Nabers drop thing is a big issue. However, there are so many other issues on the team that people ignore it. If he does it next year, then yeah, you don't want this to become a habit. And I think the way that you make this not a habit is you nip it in the bud immediately. You get rid of these type of tendencies after games to get in front of that microphone and speak ill-advised about not only the other players on the roster, but your coaches more importantly. Malik Nabers needs to learn how to be a leader because the New York Giants don't have none. And Dexter Lawrence went out there and supported his comments last week about him not getting the ball. And I understand the frustrations, but at the end of the day, you can't be throwing people under the bus when this team is lacking leadership. We need Malik Nabers, the 6th overall selection in the 2024 draft, to step up and be a leader. Muhammad Ali says it's an overreaction. Don't necessarily see it as crying. He is a dog. I don't necessarily see it as crying, but I'm not reading it as tears. I'm reading it as complaining. That's how I'm kind of reading it. And Malik is a dog. And I just think that in this situation, just go out there and be better. I'm not saying you can't speak your mind and, tell the media some of the things, but more importantly, just don't throw your coach under the bus. Hyphen Wade said, I'm taking the push. Two things can be true at the same time. You can't demand the ball and not get it done. But quarterback plays putrid, so can't really expect that much. Yeah, he's dealing with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. Santa Claus says he's taking the under. Dable created this monster when he went to a rookie to ask his opinion on the offense. He hasn't put in enough work to have a say in the offense. I 100% agree with this. He went to the podium and said that Brian Dable and the organization wants him to speak up. And although that might be true, I don't think that they meant like this by throwing the coach under the bus. I don't think they meant it like this. And, giving this guy some say on what plays we run, I can understand talking it up with your wide receiver one as a rookie, asking him the type of plays that he likes and things like that. But if he is dictating the plays that he likes and what needs to be called, Brian Dable, that's another mark on your resume and reasoning to be fired. Dean says, I don't mind him being vocal, but he needs to be more focused on that field. Agree. Kareem Yee says he's taking the push. You can't be talking and not producing. That's a fact. Liddell says, I believe Joe Schoen is out of his league when it comes to managing this team. Absolutely. Simeon Toko says, and dropping it way too much as well. Yeah, it's just, we didn't have to deal with Odell dropping the ball in his first couple of years. We dealt with some of the off-the-field shit, but we were okay with it because on the field, Odell was that guy. Malik Nabers needs to do the exact same thing. Chris P says, a leak. See what I did there? Is a baller and used to winning. He is a rookie still and gets a lot of targets. Show me one wide receiver one that gets as many targets as he does and not get drops. We're going to have to take the good with the bad. Wide receivers drop the ball. When you're getting a lot of targets, it is going to happen. I do think that he's dropping the ball a little bit egregiously right now. Number one in the league right now is Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper is another guy who's not doing enough to be out here complaining about targets or anything for that matter. But he's not complaining. I don't want to see Malik Nabers complaining about targets anymore. He's over-targeted for that matter. Rozelle says, just be like, I'm here to win. We're going to work our tails off to get better. It's tough. It sucks. None of my guys like to lose. It's that simple. You don't got to go up there. Let me tell you what Malik Nabers is doing wrong. He's allowing his emotions to show through in these press conferences. Just go out there and give them that regular answer that they cannot write any type of clickbait articles off of. Just like Rozelle broke down right here. Great answer. Great answer. Francis Moran says he's taking the under exactly. Shane is scheme first. Okay, so that's from the first one. Sebastian says he's taking the under as well. Leak has been dropping the ball lately, but we have no other options. It's facts. Nova says it's an overreaction, need to clean up the drops, but I don't give a fuck about Leak keeping it raw. As he said, this team and fans are soft as fuck. Now, I do care about that. You can't target people when you talk to the media. That's childish. And that, as a man, you got to know when it's time to allow your emotions to show. You can't go up here and as soon as the game is over, have your emotions on a roller coaster. That's not man time in my books. At least the way I was raised, it wasn't like that. Ben Harris says he's taking the under. Malik knows he wants to catch everything his way. He just doesn't know what to say at the podium. It's a skill. It really is. It really is. Oof. See, this is advice from an OG right here. A quote don't just come like this from somebody without experience. Simeon said he's taking the under. The deadliest dogs are silent. Love that. I love that right there. To me, that's the best take of all during this entire segment right here. I love that. Yeah, Ben Harris says that Jamar Chase had a drop issue at first too. And he did, but go look at how many touchdowns Jamar Chase was scoring. Got to put up them numbers, man. Like Malik Nabers right now to have that many targets, that many receptions, and averaging 9.9 yards per reception, that ain't it. Kenny G said he's taking the push. He drops a lot, but I put that on lack of accountability from coaches. I do too, bro. Every pass catcher on the team is dropping the ball too many times. I do wish he would not give so much to the media. That's a very sound take as well, too. I love that one right there. B-Rog in the building one time says, push, overreaction, under, he's a rookie. Say I need to focus on my targets and catch everything. He would grow up this way. Yeah, like the statement that stood out to me with the Malik Nabers thing is that you literally went up there and said, what was it here? I don't care about the drops? The fuck are you talking about, bruh? I don't care about the drops? Bro, if I'm his coach, I'm liable to smack the hell out of that youngin' after saying that. You don't care about the drops? Right there, done. If I'm a journalist right now and I want to have the biggest clickbait article of them all, I would have put it right up on the New York Post, right on the front page. I don't care about drops. Done. You cannot give the media that kind of fuel. You can't. You just cannot. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. B-Rog, you broke that down great. People could have it as an O, people could have it as a P, people could have it as a U. But at the end of the day, you cannot go up there in front of that podium and say, I do not care about drops. It's very immature. Very, very immature. You can't do that. Let's get to this next giant overreaction. This one comes from Mike Forcella. Big fan of the show. I'm a big fan of Mike. Good dude on Twitter. If you get the luxury of chopping it up with him about anything Giants related, tell him Authentic said. Shout out to him. Mike Forcella said the Giants can trade down this year and get the ammo to get this demon, but you are all just impatient. And the demon that he's talking about is Archie Manning Jr. Archibald. Archie's just 19 years old. He's a freshman right now at Texas. Has not played a ton of snaps. He has just 90 total attempts in all of his college career. He does have 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's a great player already, on a great trajectory to be a guy who would definitely be drafted high in the draft. Right now, the Giants currently have the 3rd overall selection in the 2025 NFL draft. And if you guys haven't had the chance to check out the podcast that I did leading up to the first matchup with the Dallas Cowboys with Lando, Dallas Cowboys content creator, is a really, really nice slow burner of a show with a lot of good information. But he also covers the Texas Longhorns as well. And he was the first person that told me, Archie's not coming out no time soon. You could book it that Archie Manning will be coming out in 2027. His family has already expressed that there's a onus and importance on Archie finishing school. The Giants would likely need the 1st overall selection to even draft the Archie Manning in 2027. Maybe the earliest would be 2026, but I doubt that a sophomore coming out after just 1 year of being the starter. I don't see that happening. And the Giants haven't had the 1st overall selection since 1965. So you're likely going to have to trade some picks to move up in the draft. And what would you do in this one? Trade back? Acquire more draft assets? You know, I was talking on Bleacher Report after the game. Shout out to everybody that pulled up, rocked out with me. And I was talking about Micah Parsons, right? Versus the edge rushers that we have on the New York Giants. I don't care how much draft capital you get back from a trade. If you can get a player like a Micah Parsons, they're worth more than 3 draft picks in the draft if you're not hitting on a player of that caliber. You know, I proposed the question that if you were a quarterback on Thursday on Thanksgiving for one of these 2 teams in the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants, which quarterback would you prefer to be? The one that was running from Micah Parsons or the one that was running from Brian Burns? I'm going to take the one that was running from Brian Burns. Micah Parsons poses a kind of a threat as an edge rusher that would make me at the quarterback position be very fearful of where he was at on the field at all times. So trading and getting assets from this next draft, I don't know how I feel about that. I think that it is extremely important for the New York Giants to get their quarterback in this draft, even if you have to trade up, especially if it's Joe Shane and Brian Dable picking that number 1 selection in this upcoming draft. For me, it's Cam Ward. For me, it's Shedeur Sanders. If it's not one of those players, it's a bust for me, okay? Would you prefer to endure another 2 years of tanking? We just had to go through 2 years of terrible New York Giants football. So we're talking about 2 years of tanking again, all for Archie Manning, so you guys can get the dream quarterback that you possibly want, the quarterback that you think fits the characters and the characteristics that the New York Giants and this front office and organization deem necessary to be the face of this franchise. For me, it's fuck all of that. I don't care about none of that. We need to shake things up a little bit. I want to see Deion Sanders on the sidelines come 2025. I want to see a Cam Ward at the quarterback position. I want to see a Shedeur Sanders at the quarterback position to shake things up. And shout out my homie, Mikey Coinsnatch on Twitter. Be having a lot of good conversations with this dude. I saw him in the comment section of this particular post. He said, you want to tank this year, bridge next year, bridge the next year after that, and then get the quarterback when Malik Nabers is near the end of the rookie contract? That don't make no sense in no world. And I saw people in the comment section of this particular post saying Giants fans are too stupid to want to wait that many years for a quarterback. Are we being serious here? We're going to wait 3 seasons before we can draft Archie Manning? To me, this is an absolute overreaction. And this just screams the people that don't want the characteristics of the quarterback or that come with a quarterback like a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, this is an absolute overreaction right here. Go get me my damn quarterback. Let me see what the chat is talking about. Maybe this was the one I didn't think would split a room, but let's see what we got here. I'll go back about a good 10. Shout out Shotgunner one time in the building. What's going on, fam? Sebastian said, this is an overreaction. Archie isn't coming until 2027. John says it's an overreaction. Archie, all Mannings stay 4 years in school. His dad, Cooper, already said his son is staying all 4 years, LOL. Hyphen Wade said it's a big overreaction. We don't have time to constantly and consistently wait for a guy when we have a chance at one of the two. Lord knows what 2026 will look like. Even if we know he's coming out or not, why wait? Shotgunner said it's an overreaction because Archie Manning is mid. Berg says it's an overreaction. Banking your franchise future on someone who can't even buy a six-pack is how you waste a decade of fans' lives. That's another good point. Ben Aris says it's an overreaction. Can never think past this year. Too much changes quickly, especially in drafts. Chris P said Archie isn't coming out until 2027 per people close to the Mannings. Cutter Bang said it's an overreaction. Impatient for what? We don't know if he'll be the Manning savant, and we don't even know if we will have the pick to take him. Too many variables. This isn't Madden. Laughing my ass off. Kansan Zero says it's an overreaction. You cannot wait until 2027 to get a quarterback. How in the world can John Mara sell the fan base on mid quarterback play for the next 2 years? Why is Cam Ward and Sanders good for other teams but not good enough for us? You would have to ask this particular individual, but that is a great question. Sabrina says it's an overreaction. Can never count on a draft pick. Muhammad Ali says it's an overreaction. Call it being impatient, but we don't have that type of time. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says it's an overreaction. What the stats on college quarterbacks with the most experienced games played. Waiting, he said, middle finger emoji, waiting for a chance at Arch. Cutter Bang said also last time we took someone who was Manning endorsed or chasing that Eli bait, it was Daniel Jones, and look how that turned out. Just saying. G Money 0013 says our team had the most drops because the quarterbacks suck. That's part of it, but it's not the main reason. Shotgunner says, because they're black quarterbacks. In response to that question, y'all crazy as shit. You know that, right? Santa Claus says it's an overreaction. It's been a decade of bad football. How much more patient do we need to be? They were patient with Doo-Doo Dan. Fuck being patient. Chaz G said waiting for Archie is super annoying, casual thinking, in my opinion. You do that, then you can't complain about Dable or Joe. Deedon Shelton says, impact players. Giants lack those on both sides of the ball. I Am Jarrell says it's an overreaction. Sometimes overthinking can make you stupid. Draft Cam or Shedeur now. Shotgunner said, I told y'all the Giants will take Carson Beck at 2 or sign Mac Jones just to tank for Manning. LOL, I see it already. Cutter Bang said, let's say we tank for 2 years and then Archie doesn't pan out. Then what? Y'all dropping bars right now. Kareem Yee says it's an overreaction. I like Archie, but we still a quarterback and Dable's career won't survive through that. And we still need a quarterback is what he meant to say there. Francis Moran says, very immature. Agreed. G Money said it's an overreaction. G Money also said, I think if we can land Cam or Shedeur, we take them. I'm with you on that, bro. Kenny G said it's an overreaction. His name holds more value than his actual play. I like the kid, but if we're in a position to draft a top quarterback right now, do it. Chaz G said Trevor Lawrence looked like the next Brady as a sophomore. That's a good point. It didn't pan out to be that. Prayers go out to Trevor Lawrence after taking that big shot. BX Banger 0814 said it's an overreaction. They begging for the great white hope. His last name doesn't prove anything on this level. Great White Hype is a great movie to go check out in reference to this type of context as well. The 13th Giant says it's an overreaction. Any opinion like this insinuates that the general manager isn't the one making the calls. This would be an organizational decision, which I don't believe Mara is even thinking about. It's craziness. B-Rog says he's taking the over. Management won't allow it. They want to win and always win now. Royal Money Entertainment says 2026, I want us to draft Ryan Williams. Let me see. Kevin the PRF says, huge overreaction. Ideally, you want to be bad enough to draft top 3 once. Yeah, you don't want to be there a bunch of times. That's a good point. Leon says he's taking the under. Still pick a quarterback in this draft, in this year's draft. Doesn't have to be in the first round. Francis Moran says he's taking the push. I don't know about trading down. However, yes, impatience with rebuilding is a problem. I'm sticking with draft best player available and trade for draft picks. I'm sticking with get the quarterback. That's how I am looking at that one right now. G-Men says Barkley and Slayton spoke up for Daniel Jones. DJ didn't speak up for anyone and left once he got benched, which shows what type of person he is. And then Chaz G pointed up and said, facts. That is facts. Mr. Mini Guy says it's an overreaction. Cutter Bang said, and hey, I mean, we draft our quarterback this year, and if it doesn't work out, we just blow up the staff and roster and sell the house for Archie in 2027. I don't know. LOL makes better sense than tanking. See, like, exactly. If you're going to try to wait for Archie Manning, don't do it on purpose. Go out here in this draft right here in 2025. Get the best quarterback on the board. If it's Shedeur Sanders, if it's Cam Ward. If it doesn't work out by the time you get to 2027, which will be that quarterback entering his what? 3rd season. Then draft another quarterback. This is what I said when we went to go pay Daniel Jones. You can draft one of these quarterbacks. They don't have to be Trevor Lawrence type of prospect, right? They don't got to be CJ Stroud. If it works out, it works out. If it don't work out, take another swing. It doesn't cost you much money. Let me see what else we got here. Hyphen Wade says, why do we have to play these games within this fan base? I wish this rationale wasn't present. We don't even know what type of quarterback Archie is 100%. That's the thing. He hasn't even played many college games, and people are already saying, go get me Archie Manning. I don't understand what these people see. Like, there's not much data out there, and they're banking on hope again. That's what it is. G-Men says, if he can walk in the owner's office and ask for a release by skipping the chain of command via coach and GM, that says all you need to know about who pushed that $40 million contract. That does speak some more volumes. That really does. Yeah, and Cutter Bang said facts, way better than tanking for 2 to 3 years. That makes no sense. Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah, and I guess everybody is just calling Archie Manning a demon, I thought was hilarious. I thought that was funny as hell. Like, Archie Manning ain't no damn demon yet. He's playing all right, though. I give him that. He's been playing some decent football when he has had the chance to get on the field. So if it's Archie in 2027, then let it be Cam Ward in 2025. I got no problem with that. But in my eyes, this one is indeed, as my homie Dave Robb would say, indubitably an overreaction for sure. All right, y'all. So that's going to do it for today's show. I told y'all I didn't want to give y'all another 3-hour show. We gave you 2 hours, 10 minutes. That should be enough. Shout out to all of y'all for pulling up, rocking out with us today on this version of the Giant Overreaction. Appreciate y'all. Y'all know that we really can't keep this channel in the positive direction that it has been going in without the support of all of y'all. So big shout out to everyone who sent in a super chat. Shout out to Dean one time. Shout out to Door Gunner. Shout out to 59 Ways to Groove. Shout out to Dr. Garrett. Shout out to Prime Mo one time. Big shout out to Talking Eco. Shout out to Chris Calith one time in the building. Big shout out to Chef Oz. Jalen Ware sent in the 199 super chat. Joe Schmo was in the building. Dean again with another super chat. Bergs, Keith Wilson Jr., and last but not least, my dog, Joe Winograd, with the $10 super chat one time. He says, nah, you don't need to keep this stream under 2 hours. I just got here and am planning to hang out for a while. Well, Joe, I got a lot of stuff on the plate today, man. Definitely go back, rewind the vibes. Today was a really good slow burner type of vibe for the show. We spoke on the general manager. We spoke on the coaches. We spoke on the quarterback situation. We briefly broke down the Dallas Cowboys game. And we spoke on a lot of thoughts from the fan base, within the fan base during these Giant Overreactions. But big shout out to Joe. Joe been supporting us on every one of these Giant Overreactions, man. So definitely appreciate you, my brother. And you know that goes a long way to help us out here, man, and help us to keep raising the bar on this channel. Big shout out to Joe one time. I see the biceps. Y'all already a step ahead of me. Shout out to the beard in the building one time, man. Big W for his Commanders against the Titans this past Sunday. Man, where are we going as New York Giants fans? I'm in a position now where I just can't wait for this season to be over, to start looking towards the offseason. and start, really assessing where the New York Giants reside within the NFC East and moving forward. What are going to be the right moves for this team to get back in the right direction? But again, shout out to the Giants Nation. Y'all be here. Y'all be showing up after these big losses. We're in tank mode right now, hoping that the New York Giants don't win another game. Currently hold on to the 3rd overall selection in the 2025 draft. I'm hoping that number gets higher and the Giants can attain the number 1 pick so that we can really, truly seal our fate at the quarterback position and get the guy that we deem necessary. Big shout out to all of y'all, man. I appreciate y'all. And I think B-Rog sent in another super chat that was saying 2 hours of this channel is never enough. Big salute to you, bro. I appreciate that, man. And appreciate all the kind words and y'all support, more importantly, on this channel. And showing up week in and week out, to discuss the New York Giants and allow me to kind of vent out some of my frustrations. So I appreciate y'all for that. Y'all know how we end every stream over here on the Giant Overreaction, on Bleacher Report, on the best division in football, on the parlay. Y'all know how we do. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. And a life without dreams is black and white. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Combat Jack. And that's a wrap, y'all. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Monday afternoon. I know I will, doing what I love to do, which is mix records. I'm going to be working on this record for my dog, Micah Robinson, closing out the final touches on this record. And that's always my favorite spot before I get to present a mix to a client. So I'll be doing that. Y'all definitely enjoy the rest of y'all Monday. And we'll be back tomorrow for the NFC East recap show at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be a good one. I cannot wait to talk about that Eagles game, and I cannot wait to talk to the Beard about the Commanders matchup as well. So make sure you pull up and tune in for that. And if you were new here, digging the vibes on the replay or live in the chat, definitely hit that subscribe button. Help us get to some of our numbers we're trying to attain here. But y'all know the saying, man, we in it for life. We not in it for likes. So I just hope y'all liked the show. That's what's most important. You don't got to like the actual YouTube video. You don't got to subscribe. You ain't got to do none of that stuff, man. Your presence here is greatly appreciated. And being that I get to talk ball on a Monday afternoon with some of the most passionate New York Giants fans, I couldn't ask for more as a content creator. So y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Monday afternoon and the rest of y'all week. If we don't catch y'all tomorrow, stay blessed, y'all. Peace.
Spike don't care.